All right, guys, welcome to the 14th episode of North Georgia Advocate Podcast. As usual, I'm here with Viral, and we're on with District 3 candidate for the Hall County Commission, Tyler Crawford. Welcome aboard, Tyler, and just introduce yourself and give us a little background, where you from and how you got up here and what got you involved in local politics, because it's a pretty interesting story to people that don't know the background of how things work in this town. And stuff like this needs to be known, so more and more people understand how they need to be involved and why they need to be involved.
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations on episode 14. Obviously, you guys are doing a great job. So it's pretty cool to see you guys. I think I've listened to every single one of them. So I usually have it on. I try to listen to like podcast stuff at work. So when I've got the machines going and I'm not kind of babysitting that kind of stuff, I like listening to podcasts, and you guys are one of them. So you guys are doing a great job on the local stuff. I don't think hardly anybody else is really touching what you guys touch in a podcast sense. So appreciate that, what you guys are doing. It's great.
Thank you.
But so my name's Tyler. I'm 40 years old. Been married for 18 years. I've got 3 kids. The oldest one is at North Hall Middle. And I say I'm here by accident, really, as far as running. I'd never any intention of running for office up until 22, probably. I don't have a resume. Like, if you were going to play the game of life, you wouldn't pick my resume to do politics. I'm not an attorney. I haven't done like all the civic groups. And that's probably the hardest part, I think, on the campaigning part, is the name recognition. Because I'm relatively new to North Hall. We've lived here since the end of 21. And then we live in the very, very corner of Northwest Hall County. So my backyard backs up to Lumpkin County. But anyways, so I guess since this is long form, I can take a little bit more time than normally doing like the 2-minute version. But I've gotten some flack for this. I am originally from California. My parents worked for Lockheed. I couldn't pick where I was born. If I could pick and go back, I wouldn't. We escaped from California when I was like 6. My parents, Lockheed gave everybody the opportunity to either move or stay and take a severance. And my parents saw the writing on the wall pretty early that California was basically running into the ground. There was a couple of instances where we had problems on our street with gang activity. So my parents were like, yeah, we're getting out of here. So moved to Marietta in 1991. And then I'm really sad that I grew up in Marietta more so than I did in California. I have very few memories of California. But grew up in Marietta and went to Sprayboro High School. And actually, the interesting part of what I'm doing now and running is when we moved to Marietta, it's the exact same situation as what I see now. The road that we lived on, Ebenezer Road, it was mostly rural-ish. We moved to a neighborhood that there wasn't any neighborhoods around it. It was probably one of the first neighborhoods built on this road. And so there was like the horse farm. I remember, like, if we turned out of our neighborhood, turned right on Ebenezer, my parents were friends with these people that owned a horse property, like almost immediately on the left. It was very rural-ish. And by the time that I graduated high school and went to Kennesaw State University, you could not turn out on that road. Like, there was no light there. Every single horse property and every single pasture and every single field got developed like while I was there. So between 1992 and 2004, that was when our area got completely overrun with developments. So, I got to watch that firsthand there, but I went to Kennesaw State University. I knew my wife in high school, but we really didn't start dating until I went to KSU. Graduated from KSU. I have a bachelor's of business administration, and then I got a minor in music, which is, I don't get to talk about it very much, but that's actually one of my favorite things I get to do. So I currently work at East Hall High School with marching band. So I've been doing marching band every year since I graduated, pretty much. Had a break for COVID. And then we moved, but probably the year after that, and I started at North Hall. But now I currently work at East Hall. So East Hall had a position for most of the season to open up, so I ended up over there. But so anyway, so we got married, moved to Oakwood in 2008. Lived in Oakwood at the Columns Apartments right behind Lanier Tech. I'd say my parents made me go to KSU because I wanted to do race car stuff. And my parents were like, you're going to fail out of that and never make any money. So they were like, you need to get a real degree, a real degree.
Right.
And that's why I was at KSU, and it worked out because my wife got a degree as well. So we were in school at the same time. But so went to Lanier, started doing race car stuff, worked on a race car team for 2 years, immediately realized why everyone that works on a race car team is either divorced or single. And that's because you're always at the track. Like you don't have a life outside of that. If your significant other is not there with you, you're never going to see them.
Exactly.
And so changed to machining. The machinists were the only people in the race car shop that didn't go anywhere. They didn't travel because they were busy building engines or machining stuff. So it was like, all right, if I want to stay in race cars, I need to do machining. So luckily Lanier does both. So I transferred at Lanier and then started doing machine tool stuff. Immediately got a job at Remington Firearms Corporation. Friend of mine worked at Remington. They had just bought a subsidiary called Advanced Armament Corporation. They were in Norcross at the time. So worked there. That was my first real machine tool job. And it was awesome. I say this a lot if I ever get a chance to talk about it. AAC was like, for the first year or two, it was the best job I ever had. The owner was great. It was kind of like the normal startup thing you think about, where you have a really passionate owner and they kind of grow to the point where they sell to Remington. So he had about 10 employees, sells to Remington. About a year later, Remington gets tired of him just because, normal CEO stuff, you want to do the things now, right? Like you don't want to wait for the committee to sign off on your one hire. So Kevin didn't like listening to other people in that context. So Kevin got terminated, and really it went from the best job ever to the worst job ever. And so a lot of what I feel like from a corporate standpoint, and a lot of what I would try to take to Hall County government if I get elected, was from there. So like I said, I mean, it went from the best job to motivating that part of it. Kevin was great at that, the marketing side of it. And then once he got fired and the bean counters took over, everything was about how to get like 10 cents out of every part. We didn't care about R&D anymore. We didn't care about innovating. We didn't care about really much anything. We just cared about really just cutting a quarter or whatever we could out of every single part. And watching that happen and watching it fail that way was, eye-opening to me, because that was the first real corporate job that I'd ever had. And so I left Remington after I applied for a job twice to kind of move up, and they didn't take me. And the people they hired, one of the ladies, she left like after a week. She got a better job offer somewhere else. And then another one they fired after 2 months. And it was like, I don't have a future here. And then oddly enough, of course, if you know anything about Remington, they went into bankruptcy a year or two ago, I think, something like that. But the writing was on the wall even then. I mean, they were running it into the ground. And a lot of ways that I see Hall County government doing. That's why it's so weird to see a lot of this overlap. Some of the same problems where you're just, from the personnel side of things, you're not paying attention to the needs of your personnel. You are doing top heavy decisions on who you're hiring, because you're hiring people that just will say yes to whatever. Anytime, man, if you ever look at any of the resignings or firings that we've had, and this is at the highest level, like I think of Srikanth Yamala, who was pretty high up in Hall County government. He was interim, like everything. Wes Gettings, who was our financial services director, Dina Boston, who was our financial services director, Beth Garman, who was our planning director. I think in a lot of those, in almost every situation, those people got canned because they started asking questions, or maybe they didn't want to necessarily toe the line that administration was giving them. And so, we'll keep going through there, but like I said, there's a lot of little overlaps. But where I start picking up for the county commission stuff is I had the audacity to ask the county if I could work from home. And so after I left Remington, not too long after that, started a company with two friends of mine that used to work for Remington. Remington moved everybody to Alabama. And we decided that we weren't going to go anywhere. We were going to start a shop here. And so I started Pro Series Fabrication. I wanted to do race car stuff because I still had that background. I still had those contacts from doing that for 2 years. And so got involved with it that way. Had two problems from places that I rented from. The very first place I rented from, they sold the building without telling us. And so I was actually subleasing, and I didn't realize I was subleasing. I was subleasing space. So this guy comes one day and is like, hey, you got 30 days to get out. And I was like, who are you? I'm like, I've never met you in my life. And he's like, I own the building. And I was like, oh crap. And so the problem with CNC machining is every machine, like the lightest machine I own weighs 5,000 pounds. So you can't just put it in a box and take it with you. You got to figure out the logistics side. You got to get the forklift. You got to get a flatbed. So you got to figure out where you're going. Not everywhere works. Not everywhere has a loading dock. Not everywhere has 3-phase power. And so you have to plan ahead, and 30 days is not really an appropriate amount of time to plan ahead. So very, very fortunate that Panos, who's in Brazelton, they had some space. And so Dan kind of took me in. I rented a corner from them. And then kind of the similar thing happened at Panos a little bit, where they were wanting the space back. And it was like, okay, if I have questions about where I'm renting space, why not just build a shop and work from home? And of course, anybody who's ever run a business, you get to a break-even point where you really need to probably start hiring somebody because there's just too much stuff to do. And so the more that I worked, the more reward that I had, because the bigger we were getting, the more money you're making. But the problem is I basically became married to work. And so the idea was, all right, if I'm going to be at work a lot, then why not work from home? And then that way I can come up, when I eat lunch, I walk up the hill to eat lunch. I get my elementary schoolers off the bus sometimes. So I walk over to the end of our driveway. So that idea of, I don't have to leave work necessarily to be able to do all the other things that make the family part work. So it's great now because that stuff's past us now. But at the time we really need to do something that's more efficient with our time than, because especially, I was in Brazelton, I was in Statham before that. So it was always kind of a little bit of a long drive to get to work. So you're wasting an hour and a half a day just in traffic. And so, but yeah, so we decided to build this shop. So we looked around for a while, couldn't hardly find anything. This is 21. I say COVID really pushed us over the edge. The Gwinnett County school system, they were doing silly stuff. My wife was like, we got to get out of Gwinnett, because we were living in Beaufort at the time. And so we left Gwinnett, we sold our house, we sold a rental house, and we were going to basically just find somewhere that had 3 to 5 acres, enough space to build a shop and be able to do that stuff. And we looked for a while. We looked for a couple months, finally found this place out in Murrayville here. And we thought that because we were so far out of the way that nobody would care. That was the whole idea, right? If you're going to buy a couple acres, who the heck cares, right? Because nobody's around, people shoot guns, there's cows out here. I can see 10 cows through the window right here. And so we really thought very naively that we weren't going to have any problem at all. We were just going to come out here and build a shop and never know anything. And if that had happened, I would not be running for county commission. And I didn't know anything about the rezoning process, didn't know any of that stuff. So my wife is like, you need to tell them everything up front. You need to be very truthful with what you're doing. Okay. So I know the exact moment in which I probably messed that up. And I told them that I was manufacturing. And so the county at the time, there was a planning director, Sarah McQuaid. Beth Garman, oddly enough, she was a senior planner, I think. But had a phone call with them, and they were like, oh, well, if you're doing manufacturing, that needs to be in an industrial rezone. And I was like, man, I don't know. Okay, whatever. I'm working from home. And so we go through that process, fill out the application for a planned industrial development, because their rationale was the planned part of it means that you only can do one thing. And so it was only going to be manufacturing. And we start the process, and there was that moment of, do you go talk to all your neighbors? Because I figured pretty much anytime a yellow sign goes up, you're going to immediately piss everybody off around you. And so we put the yellow sign up, and I tried to go talk to everybody. So I talked to my neighbors, and which is oddly enough, I'm actually friends with most of my neighbors. In fact, the people that live behind me, I'm very good friends with. Jimmy and Sherry Edwards. I talk to Jimmy multiple times a week. But so I tried to go talk to everybody and let them know, hey, you're going to see a yellow rezoning sign, but don't freak out, because it's just me. It's just a building for the 5 CNC machines I have. I don't have any employees. I have an intern, but it's not whatever you're going to think that in your head it's going to be. It's probably not that. So, I had some pictures that I had with me. I tried to talk to them as much as possible. There's only one guy that I didn't talk to on my road. He wasn't home that Saturday. So when I go through the process for the PID, man, it's a mess really from the first meeting. So from the very first meeting that I had, oddly enough, the county recommended approval, which I don't even agree with. I don't think they should have recommended approval. I think it should have been in the variance that I eventually got. But we start the process. There's only one guy, and it's the guy I didn't get a chance to talk to. And he says, I don't have a problem with it, but if you pass an industrial rezone, you're going to open up the 100 acres across the street from me, and then the 40 acres, it's kind of like right here. You're going to put on the map for developers in the future to also do rezonings out here, which actually I kind of agree with. I mean, when you look at the way that works, there is validity to that argument that if you do spot zone something, you potentially can get more stuff around there. Mm-hmm. And so it started off that way. They tabled me. So Chris Braswell was like, I don't think you have an appropriate stormwater management plan. And so they tabled me immediately. I come back. And when I come back, the second meeting that I have, all of a sudden, there's like a very coordinated effort. So there's a guy that says, I'm going to kill his grandkids from the air pollution from my industrial rezone. There's a lady that says that I'm going to contaminate the water table for my industrial rezone. There's a guy who says I'm going to destroy Henry Smith Road from the traffic that I'm going to bring from my rezone. So a lot of the stuff that you normally hear from rezonings like that, all of a sudden now there's people saying that about me. And I'm like, dude, you guys don't know anything about me because if you had ever come by where my shop is, you guys would be so unimpressed with what you guys are building this out to be. And but yeah, the biggest one there was it was very coordinated, and I noticed that immediately that everybody had like kind of the same buzzwords. And I'll never forget this. The guy that I ended up fighting the whole time, what he said to me before that second meeting start was identical to what Chris Braswell said in his closing remarks. So when they closed the public portion, I think it's Chris, but he made a motion. Somebody, it might have been Stan, I guess. No, because Chris voted against me. In his vote against me, he said identical to what my neighbor had said. Like if you had a transcript of what my neighbor said and what Chris said, it was identical. And I'm like, okay, they've been talking, it's like immediately like a red flag. So the next one, it actually barely passes 3-2. So Stan, Johnny, and Trey Bell, who was at the planning commission at the time, they actually vote for it. So it passes 3-2 for the industrial rezone. And so I go to the board of commissioners. I can't remember if it was Beth. I asked somebody up there about meeting with the commissioners because I didn't know any of this stuff. And I'll say this all day long, which is that the process of rezoning or the process of getting a variance is not made for people that haven't done it before. They don't really tell you a whole lot of how it works, what you're allowed to do. Can you talk to all these people? I mean, you can talk to essentially anybody you want. And the county never told me that. So I just kind of figured the public portion was it. Like that's your opportunity to really plead your case. And that's not the case. Obviously, the public portion is kind of for show. And really what happens is what happens in the background. It happens before the meeting. So I go to the board of commissioners and I ask, I'm like, can I meet with my commissioner ahead of time? And they're like, yeah. So I arrange a meeting with the then commissioner, and that meeting goes sideways. I go have a meeting with them on the fourth floor, and the only thing they say is, if there were any other planned industrial developments around you, I would think about passing you. And I go, wow, that sucks, because there's not anything. Like North Hall is this still pristine, undeveloped landscape. And I knew just from looking that the only planned industrial developments where people work from home in this capacity were out in Gillsville, Lula. They don't tend to care what happened out in East Hall. So there's a number of them like that in Gillsville. So I knew that there wasn't anything like that. So our meeting is 5 minutes long. I mean, literally, it was the biggest waste of time. They could have told me that in an email rather than making me drive down to the government building. So I have my meeting. The same exact stuff comes up, and I don't get any votes. So my planned industrial development was recommended for approval. It passes 3-2, and then I go to the board of commissioners and don't get a single vote. And it was like, what the heck just happened? How do we have a recommendation for approval? How do we pass the planning commission? And then how do I not get any votes? I mean, I had everybody telling me, oh, well, if you pass the planning commission, then you're in. And so there was a lot of stuff that ended up being in the background. I remember the first person I talked to, they clued me in on how things work. And it's exactly what you alluded to earlier, which is there's a lot more at play, especially in North Hall, about how things get passed and approved than there is just a public portion of a meeting. there's a lot of jockeying in the background. And as it turns out, my neighbor, I probably no need to drop many names in this, but my neighbor, his company, he employed at the time Richard Higgins, who was the chairman of the board of commissioners. Richard had sold him his logistics company. He went to go work for him for a couple of years. I assume for probably a tax, probably something like a 1031 exchange, where if you sell the company, you work for them. Maybe there's some break there. I don't know.
Right.
But then he also, at the time, he was a big donor to that commissioner. So the commissioner that was the then District 3 commissioner, he maxed out the donation that you can do, individual donation. Their company also donated to this individual. So when you start kind of peeling back the layers, you realize it didn't really almost have anything to do with me and the application. It had everything to do with what was happening in the background. And like I said, you go through that process and you see exactly how things work. And but I didn't have a choice. So I thought about selling our property. I looked at moving to Lumpkin County and White County. Just because I knew if this was that ingrained, then you're going to have to wait until these people are gone. Like if you off the bat don't have 2 votes, then you have a really hard time. You have to convince the other 3. And so I looked at moving to Lumpkin, looked at moving to White County, and talked to their planning and zoning departments. At the time, Lumpkin was under a moratorium, and then White County didn't care at all. So White County didn't have hardly any zoning restrictions at the time. Yeah. So we looked at moving to White County. And then, of course, in 21, 22, you could sell everything that you wanted all day long, but you couldn't buy anywhere because there was hardly anything for sale. It would go in a couple of days. So we knew we were going to have a really hard time. And my wife was like, we just moved. I don't want to move again. And so we were like, okay, we're going to fight it. And we knew from that idea that, the idea that you could work from home and somebody could tell you that you can't work from home is ridiculous. So it was like, there's got to be some way to make this work. That kind of idea of like 40 acres and a mule. It's like, how dare, if I buy a house and buy land and I can meet the setbacks, how is it that you can tell me that I can't work from home if we meet certain guidelines? And so I had to wait at the time. If you got denied for anything, you had to wait 6 months. And so I knew that a PID was probably not going to fly again. Like I said, I already knew I didn't have 2 votes. And so there's a path, the home occupation path. There was a variance called a rule business. And I'll never forget it. At the time, it was in the municipal code at 17-350-140. I had that thing like memorized. And also concurrently to this happening, the county fired Sarah McQuaid, who was the planning director, over a bogus charge. They said that she was writing the wrong dates down on a rezoning notice. So they fired Sarah McQuaid. They fired Beth Garman the first time. They fired a guy named Justin Crichton. They fired like everybody in planning and zoning. So when I wait the 6 months to go back for a variance, there's nobody there. Like there's literally nobody there from when I applied for the planned industrial development. So nobody knows the story. I have to really kind of do my own homework, do my own legwork. They had 2 interims. And as I apply, we hire a new planning director, lady named Randy. And it just so happens to turn out that Randy's husband also works for my neighbor. So I'm like, what are the chances? And so, of course, tied in with Richard. And so it was like, holy crap. So I applied for a rural business variance. And immediately she denies my variance. She says that I don't meet the criteria for the rural business variance. And it's interesting because the county had just recommended approval for a planned industrial development to do CNC machining. And then now here they are denying a variance to do the same thing. And basically the same site plan, the same building, same everything. So I had to pay $250 right off the bat. So I'm $700 in just getting heard for the variance this time. And I knew I figured all the same people were going to be around. So I did my own traffic study. So that those 6 months really, I would say, allowed me to really plan ahead because I didn't know anything going into the planned industrial development. So going into the variance, I really get an opportunity to see what else is happening, follow along with the board of commissioners, follow along with the planning commission. How do things happen? How do things work? So I bought a trail camera. I did my own traffic study out in front of my yard. There's one tree in my yard. I recorded every single thing that passed by my house for like 4 months, 5 months. And I had this on an Excel spreadsheet because they were saying that my industrial traffic was going to destroy the road. Well, down my road are 2 chicken houses. So we get about 7 or 8 tractor trailers a month between the chicken houses. So if I have 4 or 5 tractor trailers a year, you cannot say that I'm going to destroy Henry Smith Road because there's more in 1 month from the chicken houses than what I'm going to bring in a year. So did the traffic study, did as much as I could for the background. Oddly enough, I talked to Beth while she was working for Forsyth County government. I met with Beth twice just to make sure I was on the right track. I met with Justin once. He works for a private firm out in Athens. And so I build my case. I come back around. It's all the same shenanigans. It's all the same stuff. It's all the same people that I'm going to kill everything and destroy everything on my road. It passes the planning commission 4-1. Chris is the only person that's never voted for me. So, it is what it is there. But I make it to the Board of Commissioners, and I did not know that anybody can appeal any planning commission decision. So when I filled out the planning commission form for the variance, or the form for the variance to get heard, I thought I was just going to like sail through, because variances are normally decided by the planning commission. And so, when I fill it out, I had no clue of this. And I remember asked Brittany Passmore, who's down there. And she was like, no, anybody can appeal this. And I'd already filled the paperwork out. And I was like, oh no, because I know my neighbor's going to appeal it. Like, it's this petty. Like he filled out a thing with the marshal's office that I was operating without a permit, that I had an inoperable vehicle in my yard. It's incredibly petty at this point. And so we go this thing. I know it's going to get appealed. I know I'm going to pass the planning commission just because I passed last time, and it's much less of an ask for a variance. But not knowing that anybody could appeal it, I made a little bit of a mistake. Luckily, I had a meeting with Stan. Oddly enough, Stan actually did help me out quite a bit, which is problems. But I met with Stan at the cabinet place, and he calls the then commissioner, and whatever conversation he had, he's like, you're going to have to wait. And this person's never going to vote for you for any reason at all. Doesn't matter that it's a variance. And so Stan he motions to table, and we actually get heard at Greg Poole's very first meeting. So that first meeting in January, I'm heard by the Board of Commissioners. It passes the Planning Commission, and all the same stuff. And there's this wild card that happens. We had actually requested a meeting with this guy and his church, because like I said, it had gotten really petty. And in the meeting, it's on Vimeo. I think at some point I might play this back. Richard brings this up in the meeting, and that I'm trying to slander this guy's name to his church. All this, just ridiculous. And sure enough, luckily they table it. But the fact that Richard brought it up there at the end is so sleazy. But anyway, so I get tabled. I barely pass. In fact, I passed 3-2. Oddly enough, the three amigos who have been so appropriately named, Jeff, Billy, and Kathy, they actually vote for it. And so I pass the Board of Commissioners 3-2. So Greg, unfortunately, makes a motion to deny based on in my opinion, a straight up lie from the planning director. She states that I'm going to have to pay for 9,500 feet of water line and a fire hydrant. And that's about $2 million. It was like a little under $2 million.
Good Lord.
So Greg makes a motion to deny because he doesn't think that I can pay, and I wouldn't. I'm not going to pay for the water line. But he makes a motion to deny because in his idea, I need to come back and ask for something that's not manufacturing. So that way fire services doesn't get involved. And this actually, this just came up about a month ago. But anyway, so I go through that, past 3-2, and it's still a battle every time. Every single thing that happens in building inspections, it is a battle. And of course, all of it's coming from Richard. I know that. But every single thing, I remember the dumbest thing ever was the meter base. Hall County building inspections did not sign off on my meter base for 2 months. So I put this thing out there. I request a permit, right? For the electrical permit, I installed the meter base on the building. They did not sign off on it for 2 months because they ended up coming back around and said that my meter base was not appropriate. I'd put a dual meter base on there because I wanted to separate the electrical usage from my shop to my own personal use. And they took 2 months to decide that. And it was everything. It was a battle. They said that I had to provide engineered drawings, which I had, but I didn't want to give them. So I said, you don't need them. And they sent 2 people out from building inspections. I was not there. They sent them out on a day that I never requested this. I didn't fill out a permit for nothing. I did not request them. They sent 2 people to come out on my property, and they brought a tape measure, and they determined that I was 2.5 inches long on my 100-foot dimension for my pad. Therefore, I had 30 extra square feet. Therefore, I needed to provide engineered drawings because I was over the threshold. And I'm like, you guys are ridiculous. I had one meeting out there And the whole thing was coming back around. They wanted me to fill out a commercial permit. They said that I could not move forward without signing my building over under a commercial permit. And I knew, because they had already played this hand, that I was going to have to pay for the water line, because the code states that any commercial building in Hall County must be within 500 feet of a fire hydrant. So I'm not doing the fire hydrant. And so what happened was they came out. So it's the planning director, the assistant planning director, John Estelle was there actually. Sri Kanthimala was there. And they said, you're going to have to fill this permit out. And the day that everything changed was I told them no. I said, you guys are going to pound sand. I'm never going to fill out a commercial permit for this building. You guys are going to start acting the right way. You're going to do this the right way, or we're going to go back to the Board of Commissioners, because I have 3 votes and you have 2. So you can either do this the right way, or I can make a big scene out of this and start blowing this up and shame you guys into doing your job. And it changed a little bit from that day. I think they realized that I wasn't going to back down, I think, at that point. The other thing that also, once Richard lost, that got a lot better. And I hate to kind of like rail on Richard, but like I said, it got really petty. But once that chairman seat changed, a lot of that stuff changed. Randy resigned the day after Richard's last day, the planning director. So once that cycled through, things changed considerably. And David Gibbs has the exact same story on LL Farm. He was fighting a similar situation, and he had to wait for the Board of Commissioners to change in the same manner. And that's the part that sucks. You mentioned that, Chris. There is that kind of good old boy type establishment where if you're not in that group, you're just not going to get what you want. Like, exactly. It doesn't matter if you're a taxpayer, it doesn't matter that you're a landowner, it doesn't matter nothing. If they don't know your last name, you're not donating the right people, and you're not in that group, sorry, like somebody else that we know doesn't want you to have it, so you're not going to have it. And so
that's a shame too. I mean, how much time and resources did you lose doing this?
Yeah, because it was 2.5 years when I filled out the application for the planned industrial development to the time that I got my certificate of occupancy and my business license finally here. It was 2.5 years. That's how long it took just in applications. That would have been $1,200, $1,300. But, ultimately, if it had gotten done in a year or so, or months, yeah, I mean, I haven't even really thought about how much money I would have lost from Pro Series fabrication, because I was basically still working in Brazelton, but trying to do the building stuff and trying to do the rezoning and variance here. So from that standpoint, how much money did I lose that way? I don't know. I've never really thought about kind of adding it up that way. But yeah, I say that a lot to the building inspections department, to planning and zoning, anybody that I can, if I have an ear over there, I say that anybody bringing a variance or a rezoning forward, like, that's usually a really big deal for them. That's either their livelihood, that's a huge time and money investment to do that. And oftentimes the county doesn't care. You're just a check, you're just an address, right? So like, you're just one of the many. So the county is not really under an incentive to try and get something done or try to help you or try to do it. And I know I was fighting institutional things, but I see that a lot. We've had other rural businesses that pass, same kind of thing happened where they were dragging their feet. I think most of the time the rural businesses were taking 4 or 5 months. And that's something, I know we're kind of getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but if I have the commission seat, I would love to go down there and, as far as building inspections go, we need to have a chart up there for, this is how long this takes right now. So if somebody comes for a variance right now, rural business is taking, people are getting approved within 2 months, 3 months. That's how long it's taken. So, and that could be anything from, I want a setback. This is how long this takes, but there needs to be a real understanding of what that time commitment looks like, and getting that down as much as possible. I think the county really needs to look at how we can cut time out as much as possible. So if a rural business variance takes 60 days right now, what do we do to get it down to 58? Or what do we do to get it down to 55? Like, how can we cut time out? If you have a fight over the variance itself, okay. But as soon as it's approved, you need to really honestly help people through that process. It doesn't need to take months and months and months. It needs to take as minimal amount of time as possible from the county standpoint.
Well, and Viral's beat on this before in our past podcast, how he has trouble getting help with the city and in the county.
Yeah.
If he goes down there to get answers and stuff, and that's a shame, because especially like in your situation, you brought it up to where people aren't just moving their businesses to their house for say shits and giggles just to do it. They're doing it to save their house, save their marriage, they're doing it for a reason.
Yes.
I mean, if you can cut out 2 hours of travel time or spend more time with your family, that's better for everybody. I mean, and they need to take those things into consideration. There's a human element to this.
Yeah. And that's actually why I think the real motivation for me running was, so I had the background in this, and I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, but when you go through the process and you have a front row seat to it, you really understand how the thing works really, really well. And I know you talked about that in your courthouse setting, I think more so, but from the planning and zoning side of it and the building inspection side of it, every roadblock that they put up was an opportunity to meet somebody along the way. So, now I know Brad Cochran, who has since retired, but that's how I met John Estelle. That's how I met Robert Gutowski. That's how I met Michael Vieira, the fire marshal. That's how I met John Hornick. So you meet all these people at the county because every time they send up a roadblock, you have to figure out some way around it. So then you're starting to work with everybody on the third floor. You're starting to work with fire services. And so when you have that background of getting through that, when you have people that come up behind you, either a rural business, or I think the very first one after me that I remember really trying to help on or trying to get somewhere on it was a lady named Helena Dale. And she owns an antique store called H&H Homestead. And she had bought a property off Skits Mountain Road, and same kind of thing, institutionalized railroad. She was going to fight somebody down Skits Mountain. I don't even know who it was. But she didn't have the time to fight it. And so she sells everything and then moves to Maysville. And it's crazy, man. She sells everything, moves to Maysville, and she's up and running her antique store in months. And she didn't get anywhere in Hall County. And I'm like, how is that possible that you can move just over on the other side of the border and be up and running in months, and you didn't get anywhere in like 6 or 7 months? I mean, it's crazy to me that it would be so much easier, and really kind of depressing that somebody could move that is I think a great addition to North Hall, an antique store. I mean, there's one off of 52 anyways. There's the Crazy Mule Antiques.
Right.
So I think it's a great location. She had taken a chicken house and converted it to her antique store. And so I'm like, dude, this should have passed. This would have been great. And it didn't. And now she's in Maysville in Jackson County. And so she's paying property taxes. She's paying business taxes. She's paying money to that county because they took her in, and we should have her, and we're not.
You look at it from her standpoint, chickens or antiques, which one would you rather have? I mean, it's a no-brainer.
And the building looks the same. Like, you would never notice that it was there.
Probably takes up less resources.
Yeah. If you think about the waste and probably the water and all that, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot less involvement from, a handful of people on Friday and Saturday than there is from however many, 1,000 chickens in a building,
right.
Like 24/7. So, but yeah, that part of it, that's really what sucked me in, was we were not helping the people that needed our help. And then, of course, you contrast that to all the overdevelopment, right? So everything on 365 that's happening currently, how is it that I have to spend thousands of dollars and years of my life to be able to work from home, but I can go put 700 units at 5401 Old Weiner Highway, or I can put 300 units at 4745 Cagle Mill Road, or I can build 1.7 million square feet of warehouse? How can that happen so easily, but I cannot work from home? Like, that's crazy.
You
like
can't
that.
Build a 300 by 100 square foot building. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And so it was like, okay, like I said, we're not helping the people that need our help, and we're helping the wrong people. The people that don't need our help at all, we're helping them. And so I saw this play out time and time again, several applications after that. So there was, I think the first one right after that was kennel. The second one after that was equestrian center. There's currently one for residential board and care, like we talked about a little bit earlier. And so this idea of working from home, in my opinion, I think it's, if you need the conditions for it, great. But I think there needs to be a healthy look at what a timeline looks like. So if we look at North Hall or East Hall for the next 40 years, even it can be even less than that. My personal opinion is that we need uses that lock in a very minimal use for that land. And so if you own property and you never want to do anything with it, that's awesome. Great. Like, more kudos to you. Let's do conservation use. Let's do as much as we can, so that way it stays nothing. But if it can't be nothing, then what is the next minimal use from that? What does that look like? And so to me, in my opinion, that looks like either buildings or something that is of no use to a developer, but it allows you to keep most of your land or rural, like vacant basically, but you have some way to pay for that. So if that's an equestrian center, awesome, great. Like there's a lot of grass there. You make the money from boarding the horses, but ultimately your land is 90% undisturbed. Same thing with my rural business. My building is, 5,000. Well, the total building is 5,000 square feet, but ultimately I have 6 acres. So when you look at the 6 acres, the building takes up, I don't know, 5% of the total space.
There's no footprint whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I made the effort to make my building look agricultural-ish. So I got a big barn door up there. I've got the feed bin. I didn't want something that looked like a machine shop, even though by right I could. There was not anything could say. It's my building. It's my property. I can build whatever I want out here. It was just the use that was subject to approval. But, I made the effort to try and make it look agricultural-ish. I got to walk by there and drive by there every day too. So I don't want to look at anything gross. And so, I try to do that. But ultimately, the idea I think stands pretty well is how do we have uses that we don't have to worry about that parcel for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever. And in a lot of these cases, the people that were bringing these applications forward, they're pretty young. Helena is probably, I would say she's in her 50s, maybe. I just turned 40. A lot of these other applications, people are in their 30s and their 40s. They're doing small business stuff. So in my opinion, if they're there on the property, I'm not going to have to worry about that for as long as they live. So that, I don't have any plans of moving. So if I die here, great. So if I lock something in that has a minimal use for the next 40 years, in my opinion, that's a win.
Right.
Because of course, what can happen is neighborhoods or townhomes or apartments or warehouses or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that you found out campaigning that South Hall Republicans are nothing like North Hall and East Hall. They're two different breeds. And it's kind of like living in North Georgia and South Georgia. I mean, it's that much different. Or here and then living in the mountains. I mean, there's just that much difference in how they think and what they want.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about this here in a minute, but there's always that kind of case about infrastructure where it's like, and we do, obviously, we need the infrastructure ahead of where the growth is going to happen. But when you talk to people out here, especially rurally, like I've talked to a lot of people on the Ben Parks area, just because Ben Parks had 2 rezoning applications. So Ben Parks, Jake Kemp, George Barnes, Mount Vernon, Hubert Stevens, all that stuff kind of in that area. Everyone's on the same page, which is they don't want infrastructure. They don't want water. They don't want sewer. They don't want all the stuff because they know that once you have that stuff, that opens up the development. So is anybody that's got 40 acres, as soon as you have water and sewer, whoever it is that owns that property, and a lot of times, especially up here in North Hall, that's why I kind of joke around about the people bringing rezones are much younger. There's a lot of seasoned and of wise influence people around me. We're by far the youngest people on my road. My wife and I, we're like the only kids. Our kids are like the only kids on the bus. So like there's a lot of retirees around here. And so the problem to me becomes when those people pass, if their kids don't appreciate the land and they don't live here, then it's going to get sold to a developer. And so if you have water and sewer, then yeah, you're that 40 acres that an 80-year-old lives there right now and they're never going to sell because I grew up here. That's great for while they own it. But if their kids own it at some point and the kids don't care, they don't have that mentality, then it's going to be a development. So that's why, in my opinion, I think you pass this stuff as much as you can from a small business standpoint, because it's in my opinion, a great insulator to that overdevelopment, kind of reckless development that can happen once you open the door in that direction.
Well, and both of y'all may know the answer to this. Why doesn't the county open it up to these, like say, my grandfather dies and I inherit 1,000 acres? Why do I not know off the hand that I know I can't afford the taxes on it?
Oh, yeah.
Why aren't there other options that you can know about, that you can put it into a conservatory or whatever to lower your taxes? Do they have that on purpose, or I think that's underhanded. You should know all your options before you make a rash decision. You may want to keep the land.
And there is, I think, part of that. So I guess my shout out there is a guy named Brent Hoffman. He's used to be a realtor. He is the CEO of I think it's North Georgia Land Bank Trust.
Something like that, yeah. Land Bank Trust or something.
Yes. And so there is that kind of moving forward, but he just started that recently. I mean, so it's like, he's kind of got a neat story, but he saw the destructive pattern as a real estate agent and wanted to kind of change that. And it's exactly for the reason that you stated was if you get deeded somebody's land where it's under conservation use, or like you said, they were old enough to not pay any property taxes at all. Well, not at all. You sell the county part, but to not have the school portion. But if you get that, gifted to you, well, that next year you're going to see a decent sized tax bill.
Right.
So, there is that. I think there's a movement towards that now, just because we can't, in my opinion, you can't destroy everything. We can't get rid of every single tree. So if you're gonna try and conserve the land in that manner, I think there are hopefully better avenues moving forward. And that's the only one that I know of right now that's like that.
Yeah. So see there, I got a buddy whose aunt and uncle's real old. They're elder. They're in their 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And when they die, their grandson who's going to get the property because his parents are already gone, but he doesn't know. He can't afford it. He can't keep it. And the next closest family members can't buy the land unless they have the option to put it in a conservatory or something. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just a bad quandary. You build equity and equity and equity, and then when you try to give it off to somebody will it to somebody or whatever, it puts them in such a bind they can't do what your wishes are for unless you keep it in a trust where it can't be touched, and that's just not right.
I think the other thing too that I've seen, and I ran into this on Ben Parks Road, Savage, gosh, I can't remember his first name now. But the idea that if you have land or you're gifted land or whatever, and this is not for everybody. So this is only if you have the ability and the time and the money to do this, but you subdivide it and you put what you want on it. So you're the developer at that point.
Right.
And so, you carve out the 4 or 5 acre parcel. So if you live next door and you don't want to see the development there, then you take the bull by the horns and you subdivide it and you put there something that will never be gone. So, and I know he did that with some property that was across the street from him, across Ben Parks. And so he subdivided it into 5 acre lots. He built a house, sold the house, and then just kind of kept subdividing his like 20 acres that he had. And so that way he never had to worry about a neighborhood being put there because there were 5 houses there and they were on lot sizes that he wanted. So maybe that's a possibility moving forward. But like I said, that you have to be wanting to play developer or play builder there. And, like I said, I know that's not for everybody, but.
Right. And I think me and Viral's talked about this before, and he's got a little different view on it than I do. I'm in agreement with him, but at the same time, it's about, you can't tell people what to do with their land.
Sure.
But at the same time, property taxes are going up so high that you don't have any choice but to sell your land because you're either going to lose it or sell it.
Yeah.
I mean, but at the same time, you've got to keep the rural density. And like you talked about, if you ever get water and sewer up there, they're going to be putting 8.3 units an acre,
Yep.
Townhomes or condominiums or something. And it may be rental properties the way it's going now instead of stuff people could actually rent or buy. And but at the same time, as if it meets the Viral beats on this, if it meets the land use plan, you can't turn them down.
Yeah, that's the most dangerous part of the change that occurred in this last comprehensive plan. So the previous comprehensive plan, there was an employment corridor, and the employment corridor was really for commercial development. It didn't really have anything to do with residential development. It stated that if you were on any of the normal corridors that you can think of, 129, 365, whatever, 60, 53, if you were in that corridor, you are allowed basically, if you had frontage, you are allowed to rezone your property for commercial development. That makes sense, right? So if you have frontage on a corridor, yeah, absolutely. You probably want point of sale type commercial development. But what they did was they changed it to employment and business nodes corridors, and they tacked on in the back that you can do townhomes. And so you looked at the change that happened at 4745 Cagle Mill Road, that, and I talked about this at the Hall County GOP meeting, was in the previous comp plan, they were in employment corridors if you had frontage on 365, which 2 of those parcels did, but that did not affect your residential density. If you were going to do residential density, you still had the same density requirements that everywhere else had that was not right off of the road. So when they changed the comp plan, they allowed RX to be put into the employment and business nodes corridors. And so that problem came about where they backdoored it, didn't tell anybody. And like you said, it changed how the corridors are looked at from a land use standpoint. Now it's not just about commercial development. Now you can also cram in that type of development in the corridors as well. And we see that on 211 most often because, of course, that also got added to the employment and business nodes corridors. So that's what's allowing that type of residential development, which, you know, I know Steve Gailey has talked about this a number of times, that the sewer going up 365 was never intended for residential development because residential development has so much more, sewer usage. I think it's like 2.2 gallons a day, I think, or something like that, or I don't know, whatever.
Crazy.
Yeah, whatever the usage is in that sewer system was never designed for residential. It was only designed for commercial, and the comprehensive plan supported that because you were never allowed to do residential in the corridors. Well, I mean, you were allowed to do residential, but it wasn't to the high density standard that we have now.
No.
And so,
the tie into what you were saying is you had to have access off of 365.
Yeah.
You couldn't have access off Cagle Road or any of those other roads. That was the deal. You had to have access. Now go ahead. I just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. And like I said, to me, it makes sense. That's why I tried to say the other day on WDUN that my personal opinion is that the previous comprehensive plan is actually in pretty much every way better than the current comprehensive plan that we have. But that's one of the big ones that gets overlooked is that corridor specifically. And ironically enough, Simpson's grading on 129 was the big one. I spoke against them on this one, but only for the reason of everyone that has either Rochester or any of the other developers, I think Foothills Land Design. But if you're paying for a name brand developer, you ask for variances to the Gateway Corridors Overlay District, and it is so frustrating that they uphold the overlay district to basically used car lots and people they don't like, and then everybody else gets a variance to it. And it's like, this is so stupid. Like, the rules should apply to everybody. If you don't like the rules, and you can make a great case for that, the overlay district has some things in it that are silly. Like, I can understand that, but the problem that I have is if we're going to uphold one group of people, then we need to uphold it to everybody. If everyone universally doesn't like it, then let's get rid of it. If everyone's going to ask for a variance, then let's axe it. But
and the reason I brought up the access off 365 is you and I talked about this the other day, and the county commission should have voted unanimous to deny those buildings on 365. There's no access off of 365. They can't get over the railroad tracks. The deal was anything on the 365 side of the railroad tracks is a go. Any commercial building on the other side of the tracks, where they have to access it off of Cagle Road or Cagle Mill Road or any of those side streets, is a no-go. And this land's right next to Kubota, and that's probably the reason Kubota never jumped the track right there to build right next to the buildings they already own.
Well, two things there. One, my personal belief is they want Cagle Road to be a frontage road. I think at some point we'll probably see that. You know, if everything gets an overpass on 365, then you limit your stuff anyways. So it feels like they want that to be a frontage road. I don't know how long that's going to take. The problem, of course, is down there is Hewlin Heads Mill. There's no way to run a frontage road through Hewlin Heads Mill. So in some ways they're going to be kind of limited on what they can do. But like you said, they absolutely opened the can of worms now, where they're going to have a bunch of stuff on a road that was never meant to support that ever. You go drive down Cagle Mill Road, and it is like a nothing road down there. I mean, there's very few houses, a couple trailers. There's a gravel road where it's parked gravel, just nothing down there.
Man, as curvy as it is, how in the world tractor trailer's going to be navigating that thing?
Yep.
So let me ask you this then, like,
Sure.
shouldn't public services or public works or somebody step up and say, hey, this sewer system that we have here wasn't designed for this. There's no way any of this can go in, yet you have commissioners and developers getting the stamp of approval and giving the stamp of approval to put up 8 units per acre or whatever it may be. At what point does the department that's supposed to be responsible for sewage and water and all of this stuff come up and say, hey, I mean, because we have fire marshal comments, we have engineering comments, we have planning and zoning comments. At what point do we have those guys come up and say, hey, wait a second, this is all fine and dandy, except our sewer system can't handle this type of water usage?
Man, that's something that I really feel like in the past probably month or so, you really need a pre-meeting before they fill out an application and before they pay any money. And I've thought about this for a long time. Certainly anything in District 3, because my personal opinion is that if nothing changes, if the scenario, if I get elected to be in office, if the scenario doesn't change, I will be there 2 days a week. So I'd be there Monday and Thursday. But really what I would love to do is tell anybody that's going to bring an application forward in District 3 or anywhere else, please come see me before you ever pay them a dime or ever fill anything out. And there needs to be some understanding of, like exactly what you said, of the sewer, the water. The other big one right now, and we just had this off Triple Gap Road in Alto. She applied for a board and care place, and her narrative stated enough residents that they were going to move her in, I think it's Chapter 28 in the Life Safety Code, or whatever chapter it was. But she was going to be above a threshold that she was going to have a fire suppression sprinkler system that was going to require, same thing they were talking about with me. So she was going to have to pay for 1,700 feet of water line plus the 2 fire hydrants. And it's like, when you get to the point where you are like already heard by the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners, like that is so late into the game to start talking about those kinds of things.
Right.
It's silly to me that, and Haley Stapleton, who was the applicant for this, she was months into this. She was like 5 months, 6 months into this, and she has to start over. So she had to withdraw her application. She has to, basically, she was going to split her building in half, do a residential 2-family, which is what her current application is for. But what a waste of time and money to figure that out 6 months after you've already brought the application forward. Like, why don't we have the meeting ahead of time and really figure out, and I've told them this, like planning and zoning, have the last application, like say you're going to bring a residential board and care, the last application that was approved by the commissioners, give them a copy of that. Say, this is what happened last time. This is what their requirements were. This is a similar situation here. Like, you need to know these kinds of things before you apply for anything, because like I said, you're going to waste months, you're going to waste money, you're going to waste $1,000, whatever it is. And so, yeah, I do think the sewer part of it, the sewer, the fire services, the engineering part of it, they really need to be more upfront in the process, not just notes in the back of the packet. They really need to be at almost kind of the forefront of the planning and zoning process, because you can't just put everything anywhere you want right now because the infrastructure doesn't exist. So, like you said, I mean, if it's at capacity, or we're going to add stuff where we're going to really tax the services that we have, sorry, but just because planning and zoning, just because the comprehensive plan says you can, that gets really expensive to do that. Like, you're going to put a cost on the taxpayers to add additional capacity. That was like, maybe you don't do it here. Maybe you do it somewhere else in another part of town or whatever. But yeah, that idea of really thinking from the back of the packet and putting that at the front, that doesn't exist currently. I don't see anybody really making an effort to try and get that,
well, I mean, this is on par with anything to do with government. And yeah. But Tyler, I wanted to ask you, so like when you got started in your whole process, at what point, and I'm kind of wondering if it was your wife that made you do this, but to be the good guy and do things the right way on your property, go ask for permission. Because if that was me, I'm building and I'm running my power and I'm setting up the machines, these guys are never going to come inside and look at what I got going on. Never have to deal with the BS of government in general, but particularly Hall County government, and just come, come find me.
Yeah, there would be, if I had to do it differently, I wouldn't do it the same way. I do say that the silver lining onto what I did is that I'm running for county commission now. So like if they had passed the planned industrial development, I never would have been able to do it because they would have held the fire code. I wouldn't have a choice at that point because it would be a rezoned property. Well, where the building was at would have been rezoned. But yeah, I mean, so the silver lining, of course, is that I know and I'm running, which is great. I enjoy this part of it. But to your point, yeah, I mean, if you're going to try and do it the cheapest, fastest way possible, you ask for forgiveness later. And that looks like we talked about before, you can build the building by right? So I'm on AR1. I have 6 acres. I can build the building. That's no problem. So you build the building, you get everything signed off on, and then you talk about the use later. And I think everyone, I take that back. There's one guy off of Friendship Road that did it how I did it, and he had the same problems. But almost everybody else did it where they had the building first, and they had all of that stuff signed off on, and then they asked for the use variance, that requirement. That's absolutely the way to do it. That would be my advice to anybody trying to work from home or do a rural business or whatever, is build the building, build everything that you want first, but know obviously the requirements to the variance, but do all the building first and then worry about the variance. Because also too, when you have the variance part of it, you can get in a situation where you start kicking in some commercial code, like they upheld a 1-hour firewall in my building. And so if you do it the way that you're talking about, where you do the building first, I wouldn't have that. That was added as a condition from the planning commission. And then the planning director at the time, that particular lady, she got the firewall attached through fire services. And so that part of it cost another $3,000 or $4,000. So you had additional cost, you have additional permits, you have additional stuff. But it all comes back to your previous point, which is you kind of do need to know what you're going to do. And there's really nobody at the county that'll tell you, there's not anybody that's like, hey, if you want to do this cheap and fast, you need to do it this way. Like, don't come talk to us yet. You're not ready. There's not any, they want to take your money. They want to get the check. And maybe if you're kind of bashing government a little bit, which they deserve it. But if you bash government a little bit, I think the idea that they want more applications because then it looks like more work for them. So, they justify.
They're trying to justify their job.
Yeah.
Like, I got a reason to be here.
All these people bringing applications forward. Okay.
Yeah. And now let's get into one thing that we have trouble with this county commission is lack of communication with their constituents. You talked about, maybe mandating office hours, or they got to be there, or I remember talking to people that used to be on the county commission or the Gainesville City Council or whatever, and they used to take phone calls at all hours of the night. They always answered their phone. They published their phone numbers. They were open books to anybody that called them.
Yep.
And you don't see that anymore.
No.
And I will say that when we had trouble with the commission, I was in Jeff Stowe's district for some reason. Now I'm in District 3.
Yep.
Greg Poole's district. And I think when the county gave the city Clarks Ridge Park the rowing center, that used to be the District 3 cutoff. Now they've moved it up to Limestone. So just a half a mile from it, that's Jeff Stowe's. But we had to deal with Jeff. He always answered my phone calls. I mean, never, even the first time I called him, he answered. I mean, he helped us. But and I found out that's the exception to the rule with most of these commissioners. You can't even get an email response.
Yeah.
I mean,
And they'll tell you they don't check their emails. It's like, that's not something I would be putting out there. Like maybe it went to spam. I think I'd rather hear that it went to spam than you just don't check it, period.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, isn't that in the code and the rules that you have to respond to emails? I know it is in the city, on the city council. I don't know about the county.
Man, you would think that. I do think part of it too is, well, I don't know. I mean, I think the stereotype is the longer that you're there, the more you don't care. So I like the worst person, man, I feel like I'm throwing him under the bus, but I always hear that Billy Powell is extremely hard to get a hold of. And so like, I think there's maybe part of it where when you are new into your term or you're new into the position, I think maybe you have a heart for that more. And then maybe at some point you get jaded. I know like the Maddoxes that lived behind the Kubota development that's there at 52 and 365, that big one. I know they met with a handful of commissioners and they were basically told, we hear this story all the time. You guys are no different than anybody else. Sorry, get over it. Like, geez, okay, that sucks. Like, that's not what you want to hear from your commissioner of, or any of the other commissioners that, hey, tough. You guys are just gonna have to get over it. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's really frustrating. Even if you play the part of, at least let me hear you, and that goes into my thing from earlier. Every application is a big deal to somebody.
Right.
It's either a big deal to the applicant or it's a really big deal to the people that live around there. It is a huge deal to somebody involved in every application for the most part. Variances, if it's some sort of setback, maybe nobody cares. But it is always a big deal to somebody. And as I think as a commissioner, you owe it to the people to hear them out, even if you don't agree with the opposition at all. And even if you are going to vote against it or whatever, you still owe it to people to hear them out. And maybe that looks like in the form of a better condition. I think that's what I see the most often are conditions. Like, even if it's going to pass, you have conditions that at least protect the residents around there, which I think that's usually a good thing. I think most people, if they don't know what's going on next door, most people don't usually care near as much. So I think you can balance conditions to pass things that otherwise maybe people don't want. But ultimately that comes back from a desire to hear people and to really make the application work. It also always frustrates me when it's very obvious that commissioners have not visited the property and they vote on it. I'm like, how the heck do you do that? Like, I would never feel comfortable voting on anything if I had not been there in person.
Well, if I was a commissioner and I hadn't visited a property, I would go along with that district's commissioner.
Yes.
I'm basically I'm subverting my vote to your recommendation.
Yes. Yeah. I guess more in the terms of if the application is in your district, and you are either entertaining conditions or something along the lines where you're asking questions in the public meeting, and it's very obvious that you have not been there. The one that I think of quite a bit is at the corner of Jim Hood and 129. There was an application catty corner to that gas station. I guess it's Chevron now or whatever. But Senor Fiesta, catty corner to that, there was an application. And I remember two of the commissioners arguing about a turn in, turn out lane. And it was very obvious that neither of those commissioners had ever been on that property. Right. Like, you guys are having an argument about something that you would be much more informed on if you had been there.
Right. When I came up, I was wondering, what in the world are they arguing about?
Yeah. Yeah, it came back to, obviously, they were worried about people viewing it as a third lane. So, like, I think they were worried about people either turning on to 129 South from Jim Hood, or people in the right-hand lane going southbound viewing it as a third lane. But ultimately, what came back to it was, they just hadn't been there. They didn't understand the topographical settings of that application and what that would look like for the argument on a turn in, turn out.
And me and Viral talked about this before, and we're both in agreement, I think, that each commissioner needs to go to each property before they vote on it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and sometimes you can't. I understand sometimes things happen and you can't. But that would counteract people like Kathy Cooper and Billy Powell and Jeff Stowe, who's just going to rubber stamp certain things at least you can get out there and get eyes on it and maybe bring up a counter argument, you know, to anybody that's opposed to it or anybody that's for it and they're against it or whatever.
If the commission checks are big enough, they'll certainly do their job. That's the problem currently. But you know, one thing just from experience, the planning and zoning commissioners, I feel like they have a bigger job than just to look at applicant, look at the code, kind of go through it and pass it on. My experience with Forsyth County planning commissioner was that we sat down together, we went over the whole packet, we looked at the concerns of the neighbors, kind of worked everything out before it got to the Board of Commissioners. By the time it gets to the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners, it's, you know, what he liked to call it, that the commissioner at the time, or the planning commissioner at the time, would like to call it out, you know, it's fully wrapped up with a bow tie on top for them to pass it at that point. So there's no major arguments. Everything that could possibly come up is already kind of settled down, talked through, multiple meetings with the Board of Commissioners and that particular district's commissioner to kind of, you know, figure things out. And you know, mine was for a data center usage, so I understand it's something new, something they haven't dealt with before. So maybe they took a little bit more time to kind of process all of it. But that procedure, I feel like for every application, especially, you know, big developments, big subdivisions, industrial, et cetera, maybe, you know, it needs to go through that. And more than anything, I think something as big as 700,000 square feet or 100+ units on, you know, 20 acres or something like that, anything like that, it needs to have a public participation meeting, in my opinion. You don't just go straight to a public, a planning commission meeting. Like the public has no chance to ask the developer any questions about what they're planning on doing, what they're not going to do, address any of their concerns, you know, anything, like nothing. You get zero chance as a public to ask questions. And then you gotta hear everything if you can make it to a public, you know, or a planning commission meeting. If you have the time to go to one of those, and God forbid it gets tabled, and you made all the changes in your daily routines just to be able to go to this, because it does impact you directly, and it gets tabled. Oh, well, you got to wait another month now to hear this, or another 2 weeks.
Yep.
So I feel like that's something that Hall County needs to implement, is at least to a certain threshold. Okay, no public participation meeting, but any big developments that come through, as far as applications go, you have to hold a public participation meeting at an advertised location. You have to record it so that a planning commissioner or the district commissioner can review it and make sure that, you know, the questions and concerns of the public got addressed prior to. So that's not something you're wasting time on in these meetings, in these voting meetings. I feel like if you can get that passed prior to, you know, you don't have as much opposition and things go a lot smoother.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. That's one thing that there's a laundry list of things, obviously, that I would like to change, specifically on the planning commission, exactly what you talked about, which is, I love the idea of a mandatory public meeting without, you know, the county there, where you have to meet with the residents. I think generally good developers try to do that, although I would argue maybe sometimes they don't do a great job of advertising that. So they're hoping 2 or 3 people show up and that's it. Like, cause you know, or we talked about before, or maybe, is that there's a meeting tomorrow night on Ben Parks Road for the planned commercial development. And Rochester is the applicant for this particular one. And to their credit, Rochester sent out letters to like just about everybody on Ben Parks. And the weird part about it, I got a letter. So I don't know how I got a letter. I live, you know, up Mount Vernon Road, down Henry Smith Road. I don't know if somebody was like, maybe he wants one. I don't know. But at any rate, that idea of being very upfront, I think it only helps the situation when you try and do as much communication as you can. When you try to hide stuff and like this last one on 3294 Athens Highway, In my opinion, they were trying to hide future development in the back part of the property. They got sniffed out on that. When you have that kind of situation and the communication breaks down, that's when you have, I think, problems that the commissioners have to sort out. But ultimately, if you do a great job communicating up front, like you said, the commission meeting at that point should be pretty straightforward and easy. But yeah, if you're going to reimagine the process, the mandatory meeting looks great ahead of time. And then also the planning commission, in my opinion, I've not really floated this out to many people. I've floated it to my wife. My wife doesn't like this idea. But I think what you do is, their complaint was, and the reason, the justification that they gave for meeting behind closed doors was that things take too long, which is kind of ironic because it's like, that's your job. So like, you're supposed to figure out conditions and those kinds of things. But if you have the meeting up front, I think what you do is, my personal opinion is, you move the meeting to like Saturday morning, and however long it takes is how long it takes. We're going to be here all day Saturday. So if you have the ability and the time to come to this meeting, great. But the planning commission, I think the 5 o'clock thing doesn't help anybody. You know, I always hear people complain that they can't get over there to the government building at 5 o'clock. So let's do it on Saturday. If we don't have anything going on Saturday, let's do it. You know, if it's 2 Saturdays a month, great. If they're going to take forever, maybe you do 1 Saturday a month. I don't know, whatever. But it looks like and we need to do this in a lot of places. It looks like asking the question, what are we doing and why are we doing it? And, you know, to your point there, Viral, is the communication part of it is so poor that my opinion is we intentionally don't tell people because we want this stuff to just slip through. So, you know, when we look at what's passed, you know, the great one, of course, is the sign that Corey found out in the woods.
Yeah, in the middle
like,
of the woods. Yeah,
you're gonna hide this sign out in the woods for the rezoning at 5111 or whatever it was, 54. I can't remember.
Gillum knew better than that. You know.
Yeah, and it's like, this totally makes sense because you guys don't want people to know what's going on. You don't update document center. You don't put things online until like the bare minimum required by law. You guys do a terrible job of letting anybody know. And so, like you said, the process is so radically different than several of the other counties around us that the only way that it can be done this bad is that somebody intentionally wants this to be this way. So in my opinion, you know, and that comes back to the county administration. I think they're the ones that are pushing these policies. When you look at what's happened, the sign thing specifically, I think, in my opinion, the stuff would not be this bad if the county administration wanted it to be good. So like, in my opinion, that's where it's coming from, is that the policies that we have, and this goes all the way down to, I brought up before, why don't we have different signs for a rezoning and a variance? Because, you know, people will come to a variance hearing and they'll be like, I don't want this property rezoned, and they're doing whatever. And it's like, well, they're not actually rezoning the property. They're just asking for, you know, a rule of business, or they're asking for a setback, or they're asking for whatever. People see the yellow rezoning sign and they kind of assume what's going on there. And since the county does a terrible job putting these things online for people to read, then they go to the meeting and they're all ticked off that somebody's rezoning the property because it says rezoning right on there. And I'm like, why don't you have a different sign for a variance? And they go, well, the cost would be too high. Like, literally, that's what planning and zoning told me, was that if they had to buy like 50 signs a year, that the cost would be too high. I'm like,
oh, no more to buy a pink sign than it does a yellow one.
I'm like, how is the cost too high to let people know? Like, the government's job is to let people know. Like, the $500 it's going to cost for different signs for a variance, that's nothing to me.
They want to save 50 cents here to spend $1 million here.
Yeah, and we have all the, you know, we can go off on all the you know, I always say, like, the fraud, the waste, fraud, and abuse that happens in the county government happens on the Monday. You know, it happens at the work session meetings because that's the least attended time. That's why they're at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday.
Then they got those work sessions nobody can go into, and that's where all the deals are done, you know.
Yeah, and that's why they're put on the consent agenda, because the meetings that people do go to, which are the Thursday voting meetings, they never talk about what's in the consent agenda. That's why the spending is put in that consent agenda, is so nobody brings it up. And it's like, you guys spend so much money on all kinds of stuff. And the dumbest thing, of course, is the water bottle thing. That's incredibly stupid in my opinion. Every work session meeting, there's usually something in there that you're like, we are blowing more money than what makes sense. But, you know, if you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on change orders and whatever, surely you can spend $500 on a sign to let people know exactly what you're doing. So, we have misplaced priorities on what we're spending money on in a lot of places. And that seems to be one of them. Like I said, small stuff, but I think it all comes back to see where we don't care about communication.
Well, and it's like, even if they do put it in the packet, who in the hell's got time to read through 1,000 pages sometimes in the packet to find what they're looking for? I mean,
That's what it.
you download a PDF. When you got a PDF that's 200 or 300 megabytes, I mean, that's 900,000 pages. Some of them I've downloaded. It takes my Adobe. I'm on Fiverr, and it takes my Adobe Acrobat like 15 minutes to sort through it.
Yeah, they take a long time to load, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, come on now. Let's be realistic here.
That's what I think gets into the very frustrating part on Acela, and this is tangentially related, obviously, but our program, I've talked about this before, but our program for permitting, which is a program called Acela, the way that we use it is so incredibly poor that the only way that we can use it this badly is because we don't want people to know. And the perfect example of this is if you go to Gwinnett County and you go to their planning and zoning site, they have the exact same program. It's the exact same Acela. It looks exactly the same. A lot of the drop downs are the same, but they will have so much more information than what our Hall County viewer has. And part of what they have in Acela is they have very easily broken down. If you want to look at the site plan, you just click on the site plan. If you want to read their narrative, just click on the narrative. You don't have to have the whole packet. You just have the bits and pieces that you want. And the frustrating part is we're paying for this. Like, we're paying the additional $50,000 a year for this program to be able to do this, and we don't use it for that. And it's like, again, why would you do it this badly unless you really didn't want to tell people?
Who would be in charge of how this program, or the program is set up for the public? Would that be the planning director, or would that be county commissioner, admin?
I've not narrowed this down. My guess is admin is in charge of setting the policies for it. But ultimately, who's entering the data is probably, essentially everyone enters the data, right? So they do, if you look at the county's version of Acela, so like their portal looks way different than the citizens portal. So the citizens access portal is what you have at home. The county's version is, it has all the information in it. And so everyone uploads their information. So everyone is capable of editing what's there. So planning and zoning has the original part of it. Anytime that there is a permit given by building inspections, or created by permitting, the permit is created in there. The inspection, when that is either approved or denied, that's updated in there. Fire services does their update. So all of the uses that you have in the packet. So like when you read a packet, like when Chris was talking about, when you read the packet and you open up all the notes, they're actually already put into Acela. But what the county is doing is they're turning off your capability to actually read that in Acela.
Review it, right.
Yep. And so to me, like you said, that can only come from an admin policy. I can't see planning and zoning being like, well, we don't want people to see our stuff. It's got to be a top-down decision to turn off certain things that the citizen access portal can see.
Or they're so damn ignorant they don't even know the options are there.
Well, what I would say on that is apparently we hired a guy from Gwinnett about a month ago, 2 months ago, somewhere in there. And this is in the MIS department, which is that management information systems, I think. But we hired a guy from Gwinnett to try and start doing some of this. So if you noticed in the past probably 2 or 3 weeks, we have actually added some things in Acela. Now, it does not look like it does in Gwinnett. The main things that I've noticed that we've added are some of the property information. So some of the information that was in Q Public is now in there. And they've done a little bit better of a job telling you open applications for permits. And so there is some functionality that's been added in the past couple of weeks, but we're not to the point of Gwinnett in terms of the packet stuff. And then also what I love that Gwinnett does, which is crazy because Gwinnett has all kinds of problems, but in Acela, they're doing a great job of this, and they have links in there to, if you want to look at a particular application, they'll actually have, as far as the dropdown goes, any of their previous applications. So if you had 5401 Old Winder Highway, they have the whole history of any permit, of any rezoning application, of anything for that one parcel. So what we have to do in the county right now is you have to go dig through Agenda Center, which is crazy because if you don't know the date on which it was owned, you're not going to find it. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. And so Gwinnett's version of Acela will have that information in there. They'll tell you what the rezoning was. They'll tell you exactly how the vote goes or how it went. They'll even have a link in there to open up the minutes, and it'll go right to the spot in the minutes from that hearing on how that went. And I'm like, dude, we absolutely need to do the same thing, because a lot of the stuff, I think the one, I guess it's 5401 Bullwinder Highway, where Jill Cooper brought up that it had been attempted for a rezone, and Steve Gilliam was also that applicant. It was 2000, I don't know, it was like 10 years ago or something like that. But she had it in her public portion where, she had the original site plan. She showed it on the screen, and you wouldn't know that unless you found it in Agenda Center, or if it was so old, you would have to open records request that information from the county, and you would have to know the date, So it's like, again, it comes back to communication, where we don't want people to know what's going on currently and what has happened in the past at a given property.
Yeah, well, maybe they just didn't have people capable of running the program right, and maybe they're trying to correct that.
Well, to that point, I did call Acela. So when I spoke at the last voting meeting where they had passed it, and I spoke in the public comment because they had just approved the next contract renewal for Acela, I did call Acela before that meeting, and I said, hey, I live in Hall County. I'm interested to verify that the enhanced I think it's enhanced resource database, I think is specifically the functionality for the citizens portal. I called them and I wanted to make sure that what I was going to say was accurate. And I wanted to make sure, what I look at in other counties, we have that capability through the enhanced resource database. And they didn't want to tell me a whole lot because they wanted to make sure who I was. And then since I don't work for Hall County government, they were not interested in telling me anything about our specific package, I guess, through our contract. So I had to be very generic, and I asked them, if I was any other municipality and I'm looking at the enhanced resource database, does it include this functionality? Yes. Okay. And then I asked about training, and they have webinars all the time. So if you pay the $500,000 a year for this program, it includes the training for that. You just have to sign up for it and use it. They're not going to come to you because they're based out of California. But to my understanding, when I look at the contract, and I don't have the specifics to it, but it appears that we do actually pay for the ability to do training with Acela. So it gets very frustrating.
The leadership's just not doing what.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I've also heard that somebody at some point, that I guess would be nameless, the city of Gainesville also offered to help train some people in Acela, and it was turned down.
No. Does the buck stop with Zach, or does it stop below him?
It sounds like it does.
Because at some point, with all this planning commission fiasco,
mm-hmm.
all the turnover in his office,
mm-hmm.
and everything, he's not going to he can't keep playing John Gotti here, being the Teflon Don. Yep. Eventually, he's going to have to be held responsible for all this stuff, because you can't tell me that he didn't know something that was going on with those planning meetings. I mean, you can't be in that office and not hear rumbling. I mean, it's not like the building 15 stories high and 1 million square feet, got offices everywhere. I mean, everything's centrally located right there.
Yeah, and I think, depending how the vote goes, if I end up winning the seat, I would be very interested to talk to a number of people that have left Hall County government almost immediately. I don't mean to broadcast what I'm doing here, but certainly Wes Gettings, who was the financial services director before Taylor, Dina Boston, who was the financial services director. There's something weird going on there where we've had, 2 of the last 3 financial services directors kind of resign in the middle of the night. And to me, when you understand the responsibilities of that job, and if anybody's going to know where some dead bodies are buried, it's going to be financial services. So it's like, in my opinion, I think you go talk to those people and see what in the world was going on. Why did they leave? I don't know if they'll tell you anything. Maybe they're under an NDA. I don't know. Well, but I think you can kind of gauge what's going on there by
exactly. And I'm getting to the point that where I don't even know if Zach's qualified to do his job. He got the job through nepotism. You know,
Maybe.
he didn't even have any. I'm not saying he's not qualified degree wise and experience, but he didn't even have anybody apply up against him. You know,
how's he related into Hall County?
Jeff Stowe's wife.
Jeff Stowe's wife's brothers?
Cousin or nephew or something. I mean, it's real close.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not know that.
He got hired when they were on one of their drunken retreats. The county commission. They come back from one of their retreats to Tybee Island or St. Simon's, and he had the job.
That is interesting.
I mean,
I wonder how many people in Hall County know that.
Yeah, it's a weird story. There's a few articles in the Gainesville Times, but it doesn't really add it, but you can read between the lines here.
Yep. Maybe.
I mean, it all ties back to the three amigos at this point: Billy Powell, Jeff Stowe, and Kathy Cooper.
I think that's where a lot of the stuff is coming from, where in theory, not saying that this is the case, but in theory, if you were in a county administration position and you were hired and fired by the 5 board of commissioners, you live and die by 3 of the board of commissioners, right? So as long as you're doing what 3 of the board of commissioners tell you to do, then you're good. Doesn't matter what the other 2 say because they don't have the power. So by that token, I think I think there could be a scenario that exists where they aren't probably as concerned with a lot of this stuff because they know that there potentially isn't the votes to change that situation or remedy certain things. So, you know, I'm sure that's part of it. I don't know. Whatever happens, what happens, I guess. But yeah, there could be some part of that.
And where does the fallout end from this planning commission? Because a lot of the people you talked about, as of last night or as of this morning, I talked to Jody, and that judge still hadn't ruled on Stan Hunt, Chris Braswell, and all. He said the end of last week.
Yep.
Then he said 10 business days, and he still hadn't ruled, but he's got a full plate coming up here from Gwinnett County to Hall County. They gave her an explanation, but if this gets bound over to court, which it probably will, because she did a really good job, and those people will likely get subpoenaed at some point. When do the bodies quit dropping? Does Katie get caught up in this? Katie Greenway? I mean, all that. I mean, because she's still in play. Even though she did report it, she kept continuing to go to some of the meetings. I mean, where do you think it stops? I mean, we're just kind of playing speculatory here. And who do you think should it be? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but at some point, if you participate in those meetings, you should be held accountable, in my opinion.
Well, the weird part there was, if you remember, well, I wouldn't say if you remember because it wasn't recorded or live streamed, even though it was in the second floor conference room. The hearing that they had on that random was a Wednesday or whatever that was. When they had the hearing that they told nobody about, and the guy was Bubba Samuels when he was up from Gwinnett or whatever. When he did the hearing in the second floor conference room, at the beginning of that meeting, they did actually talk about having Zach on the stand. In fact, they made a mention of everybody that they had talked about bringing up there and doing questioning, something to that effect. And then also, if you remember, I think the original, when Stan Hunt made a comment where, I guess it was in the Mitchell investigation, where he's going to blow it up at the end and everybody's in on it. The commissioners are in on it. The county administration's in on it. Like, definitely that kind of scorned, a lashing out by Stan to try and
throw everybody under the bus except for him.
Yeah, but the idea is how much of that is true. So, I mean, I'm sure some of it is maybe him wanting to, maybe he was wanting to defend himself, and that was the only way that he felt that he could do that was people were okay with it and had signed off on them doing it. But, I think in any conspiracy theory, if you want to use that for lack of a better term, there's always a nugget of truth. There's always a kernel there. And potentially there are people, and we don't know that because they were not questioned.
Right.
And so, that if you're going to really root out who all was involved and who all knew this stuff, then I think you do have to go through everybody. I think you do need to question everybody. Let's put everybody. I mean, I'm sure, Greg says that all the time. He doesn't have anything to hide. Okay, well then let's question everybody. Let's question all the commissioners. Let's question the county administration, the administrators, and then I don't know if John would be involved in much, but let's question Casey. So let's figure out how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And I break that up because no matter what, either you, Steve, Shannon, or Gina are going to have to deal with this fallout because it's not going to be resolved before y'all take office, whoever takes office in January.
Right.
I mean, we know that for a fact, especially if Jody's case gets put into court. It could be a couple of years.
Yeah, and the hard part there too is I think you need a planning commission, and there's an argument to be made that without a planning commission, we are running into problems with certain things. And I think the longer this goes on, the harder it is to kind of remedy certain situations. And I think we need to move forward as quickly as possible, but we need to rip the Band-Aid off and figure out who all is involved and be cognizant of the fact that we just need to move quickly. Like, we can't keep dragging this out. We can't keep doing all this stuff. We've got to clean what's there, remove the virus or whatever, and then we need to move on. We need to, in my opinion, we need to have the planning commission. I think probably David's impression of this is when the seats change or whatever that looks like come January, that the planning commission comes back then, and then you just reappoint 5 new people. You just start over.
And the way it should be, because the 3 that got canned, we know they're guilty. It's already been proven to the county point. I mean, now the legal standpoint, they'll never get their jobs back, but they may win in court and maybe get to sue for money or something.
Right. Right.
But it's time that they can move on if the county wants to. If they want to, they should be free and clear to appoint another planning commission now if they want to.
Yep, they need to, because I know, like we talked about before, the timeline is so short now that you basically only have 15 days. So when you see the yellow rezoning sign come out, that's your warning right now, and you're going to have 15 days before it's heard by the Board of Commissioners. And so, like I said, the longer this gets drawn out, the worse this gets. And so we need the planning commission back, in my opinion, but we need to be able to have that process of, exactly what Viral said earlier, which is really figuring out the conditions, really figuring out the application, because the commissioners, in my opinion, shouldn't be, shouldn't be, but it should be the process where, like you said, the commissioners are kind of the bow on the top because everything's been sorted out. There isn't really a huge question as far as a rezoning goes or a variance goes. But we're really lacking in that right now, like extremely lacking in that ability to effectively handle rezonings and handle the conditions around them.
Right. Now, I think Viral and Corey talked about this last week. What's your opinion? And Viral can expand on it. What's your opinion of maybe not the commissioners? They get to appoint who they want, but there should be some sort of a screening process to be sure you get qualified people in place. I mean, I think Tyler being on the tax commission if he don't know nothing about taxes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think Tyler is the one that kind of pointed this out to me at one point, and I think maybe Corey got that from him too. I think you had said something along the lines of you saw a city council person from a different city around here or something like that had an application process for their appointed folks and whatnot, and then you implement something like that.
Yeah, shout out Will Cagle. So Will Cagle is the District 1 County Commissioner in Cherokee County. And I only know him through Facebook. I saw a bunch of his signs. So my mom lives in Woodstock. And so we would drive down Matt Highway sometimes, going back into Cherokee and then take 20 down through Canton. So I'd see a lot of his signs, started following him through there. But I love that idea. In fact, my personal opinion is any of the applications for appointments or anything that a county commissioner would be responsible to make an appointment to, I think you should have open applications for all of those. I don't like the idea of people having been there forever. My prerequisite is you cannot have done the job previously. So that's anything. That's the library board. That's Parks and Leisure. That's the whatever. Chicopee Woods Association. I don't care what it is. If I'm making an appointment, it needs to be somebody that's new. And I think the problem comes back again to people just get there too long, or they stay there too long, and then it becomes their seat. They become very attached to that. It becomes their thing. If you want to do the deal, then you got to go through them. And it's not about that. It's about service. So, but yeah, the planning commission thing, I think probably the hard part, if you do have people that are qualified, man, you got to find the right person, because I could see a situation where somebody is really qualified that they would, maybe the pay is not there for them to go, well, I can't do that because I'm so busy with whatever. And in Will's case specifically, they were looking for somebody on like a transportation board, and he lucked out big time because he got a guy that was like, he had worked for, I can't remember, I don't think it was Archer Western, but it was somebody out that way that had worked for a construction company in the context of road construction. I'm like, man, what a better, if you get the wrong person, maybe they start doing some deals with their friends. But if you're doing it from an advisory standpoint where it's only for, hey, this is this condition, or we need to look at this part of it. Yeah, there, I think you could make a great argument where you have somebody that has a little bit more of a background in that. But I don't know. Yeah, you do. I could see a situation where the pay maybe comes in, because at the end of the day, you have to have somebody that wants to do it. They understand that it's a service job. So you have to always be in that context of, you have to have a heart for that. You have to have a heart for helping people. You have to have a heart for meeting with people. You have to go to meetings. So if people view that as purely just a job, that I don't know that it pays enough for somebody to just treat it as a job.
In this county, we've been proven true that the pay is obviously pretty damn good, but the perks you get, because you got 3 people spending $100,000 to keep a $12,000 a year job.
Right.
I mean, it's the doors that it opens. It's pretty much, it's more of a job to where if you get on there on the planning commission and you own a business or whatever, I'm not saying it's against the law or unethical or anything, but it does open a lot of doors.
And that's why almost kind of I don't know if this is a libertarian slant at all. You guys can take your opinion on it, but I think that's why you need a revolving door, right, so to speak, in government, is that you are constantly, it's never your seat, right? It is your burden to bear for a short amount of time, and you vacate that seat willingly. And what you do is you just have a constant awareness that the seat doesn't belong to any one person. It belongs to the person who has been entrusted for that certain term. And that's it. But you do the job that you're called to do for a short amount of time, and then you move on, and it becomes somebody else's, opportunity or position to be in. So,
well, case in point, Brazel had been there 18 years, Stan Hunt about 13, 14, and both of them testified that the way they were doing things is how it's always been done.
Yes. Yeah, and that's
how long has it been going on? And you can't tell me none of those people went to training.
Yeah. Yeah, and they talked about that briefly, right? So the people that had been there before on the planning commission, because they only went back a year, right? So they only went back the previous year.
I had the video for that. So
so the people that were there on the planning commission before that year, man, what do you say about that situation?
I mean, the things have passed under Braswell for 18 years.
And that's also the problem that I have with him being on the steering committee for the comprehensive plan, is when you're that, I don't know, ingrained in the process, I think you start looking at things differently. I think that's the biggest advantage to constantly cycling people through for 4 years at a time, is that you don't have somebody that I just think they see it differently than just a normal person off the street. If you're in commercial real estate, if you're on the planning commission, if you're on the steering committee, I think you tend to look at it not from a generic taxpayer side of things. I think you start to look at it from I have this influence. I can make these choices. I can help my employer make money. So, when you start really giving a lot of authority to somebody that's not elected, they're appointed, you really open the door to abuse, in my opinion.
Yeah, you do. And we see that rampantly. I mean, you and I talked about this the other day, Tyler. You go look at the the Chamber of Commerce and all their committees and directors. They probably got a 75 to 100 directors over there. It's the same people on every. It's just, and everything's entrenched. And before we start wrapping up, what would you do? Viral and I and Corey talked about it last week, and we got a lot of good ideas from Corey. When they rewrite the UDC, who should be involved in rewriting that? Should it be just real estate agents, doctors, lawyers, everyday people? But you got
should be the three amigos.
Blithering idiots on the committee that don't know anything about it, but you know what I'm getting at. I mean, it shouldn't be just composed of Norton Agency real estate people, or you know.
I think it should be the three amigos, Rochester, Carol Daniels,
and Steve Gillen.
So the Gainesville Hall County Development Authority should rewrite it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Let the swamp write it. They do a great job.
For a real answer, well, there's two parts. So the Unified Development Code, I don't have near as much of a problem just because the development or the UDC is really kind of the nuts and bolts. So the UDC is primarily like your setbacks. It's your lot sizes. Well, it's the like definitive dimensional allowances for certain things. And so the UDC, in my opinion, is I think you do have an opportunity for builders to go. Yeah, I know you guys talked about it when you guys talk about like they added an ADU in this last Unified Development Code, which is great. I like the what was that accessory dwelling unit. I like that idea that you could build 1,000 square foot or less unit back behind your house, almost like an in-law suite. And then you have, if you get a short-term rental license, you have the ability to rent that out. So I think depending on where you are, that's a great thing moving forward. And I think a lot of the nuts and bolts stuff, you can get good ideas from builders. I know Frank Norton's been on this thing where he wants to see some reduction in the building code for what they consider to be affordable housing. So his specifically was he doesn't think that they need to have like outlets every, was it 12 feet or 10 feet or something like that. So his idea was that you can scale down some of the building code in that capacity to do affordable housing. So if you don't have 3 outlet boxes or 3 receptacles in a room, you only have 2, then you save a little bit of money there on the wiring and the install and all that kind of stuff. So I see the Unified Development Code as being more accessible in that manner to developers or real estate agents or whatever. The comprehensive plan, since it is the framework to where our growth is supposed to happen, I wouldn't let any of those people around that. I think the comprehensive plan, I would say, needs to be county staff. And if they want to outsource it to a third-party firm, I think we need to be very careful about who that third-party firm is. We've used, I think, like CPL in the past. If you get a third-party firm that is more down towards Metro Atlanta, you get a comprehensive plan that looks more like Metro Atlanta. And that's, in my opinion, why this current comp plan looks like it does, is because we didn't use CPL for this one. We used, I don't remember. But
it was a firm out of Atlanta. I remember that was consulting and kind of overlooking the entire push for the new UDC.
And this is going to be a little bit of a radical plan because you may get mixed answers from this, but I think the people that live here are actually more than capable of getting you about 80% of the way there to a comprehensive plan. I think generally speaking, people understand, they drive it every day, right? So like if I drive a route every day and I know where all the bottlenecks are and I know where all the problems are, then I'm more likely to say, yeah, don't keep cramming people over here. So when I got on door knocking in the past, I always make sure to ask a couple of questions. One of them is, what is the minimum lot size that you would support around you for a neighborhood? What do you want to see around you? So do you want to see any more commercial or industrial or residential? So I have a couple of questions that I ask, and everybody around me is very uniform in their answers. Most everybody does not want to see anything else added up here, which obviously, there is a kind of like you briefly alluded to earlier about property rights. So I think people understand that there can be neighborhoods out here that just needs to be an appropriate lot size. But I honestly feel like of all the people that I've talked to, if you had like an average answer, you really could get 80 or 90% of the way there to a comprehensive plan. I think you just have the finishing touches on like the specifics of it. So if you have character areas, what does that specifically look like and where are the boundaries for those character areas? That's probably a planning and zoning thing. That's maybe a third party thing. When you create zoning classifications out of thin air, that's probably planning and zoning thing or whatever. But I think generally speaking, if you have an average of a certain area, you can kind of figure out the character areas. You can kind of figure out the corridors. You can kind of figure out any of the little parts of the comp plan that have been abused here in this last one. So I would say the county needs to get more feedback. I always ask this one too. I've talked about this a bunch of times. The county got 630 people to give their feedback to draft what the steering committee was supposed to use. And so 630 is 0.03% of Hall County. So there's 228,000 people in Hall County. So it's a obviously very small amount of people. And so everyone I always ask them, how many people do you think the county needs to get feedback from before we can move on with an update to the comprehensive plan? And that answer right now looks like about 30%. I think that would be pretty tricky to do. That's a lot of people. You start talking about 70,000 people. But I think if you got somewhere, I think if you even got a couple thousand people, I have to say this while we're here, I know we're wrapping up, but the city of Flowery Branch, I have to give Charles Vanderbilt his kudos here. And I know the way that he's gonna pass the limelight on to planning and zoning, which he should. But the city of Flowery Branch, I don't know how many people are in there. I never really looked up how many people live in the city limits of Flowery Branch. But the municipalities have to do their comprehensive plan the year following the county. So all the municipalities had to do it. Flowery Branch was the only one where they made a real effort to get people's feedback. They had it on their social media all the time. They sent people out to go talk. I mean, they made a very real effort to get people to give their feedback to their comprehensive plan. And in the city of Flowery Branch, they got like 850 people to give feedback for their comprehensive plan. So the city of Flowery Branch alone got more people than the county did for the last comprehensive plan. And that's just a year later. That's like 2 years later. So how is it possible that a city of 10,000 people got more people for the feedback than a county of 228,000 people? That's crazy to me. So I think maybe somewhere along that percentage, whatever that percentage is of Flowery Branch. So if that's 8% or 10% of the people, maybe we need to shoot for that. Maybe it's 10%. So maybe we need to get 23,000 people to get their feedback before we move on. I don't know.
Well, even if you just shot for the 75,000 property owners in this town, yeah. I mean, that's not even close to 10% of that's not even 10% of the property. There's only like 77,000 property owners or homeowners in Hall County.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that you're just not getting a good sample size.
For sure. Yep. And that's the problem with 0.03%, in my opinion.
Yeah. And how does that tie into the Vision 2050 and Vision 2030? I mean, I know it's all intertwined, but you got to make these entities work together, because this past UDC code had so much bull crap in it that shouldn't be in there.
Dude, you could soapbox on the communication part for a long time. And as bad as the county is in communicating with its citizens, they are also bad in communicating with the municipalities. Yes, with themselves. And I've asked this of the city of Lua. I've asked this of Flowery Branch. If you go talk to any of the cities, they get almost nothing from the county as far as what they're doing. Do our comprehensive plans align? Do they make sense with each other? And I know you talked about this back on the Cagle Mill discussion. If you go up Julian Ball Road, the city of Lula is starting to do rezones right there. And so they're starting to kind of bring southwards down towards Cagle Road industrial developments. And so, if there's a complaint or if there's a point to be made that Cagle Mill Road can't handle it, well, that may be the case for the county, but the city, their own rezonings are going to use the same roads right there. So then you run into that whole problem of we had no choice. And I know you saw that a lot with the city of Buford, where Buford was annexing in a lot of things down in Southall, and they were passing stuff that the county would deny. And that's the reason why they were getting annexed, because it was so far from the city of Buford that Buford didn't care, because they were just making money hand over fist off of industrial rezones. And it became a problem to the county residents who were not in the city limits that live next door. And so, yeah, that whole idea of getting everybody on the same page, we fight the city of Buford a lot, which is stupid in my opinion. We really need to make a better effort to just be all on the same team. I mean, we all live in the same place. We're all in the same county, all these municipalities, the 8 municipalities or whatever. We need people, and it has to come from the commissioner level. We need the commissioners to understand that everybody has to work in unison here. So if you have problems, if the cities have problems and their comp plans don't align with ours, then we either need to reevaluate ours or be like, hey, it doesn't, like you talked about the sewer doesn't support this. So if you guys are going to do your own sewer, great. You know, that's a lot of infrastructure capital to spend, but you guys cannot pass stuff and not have it be a drain on our county services. So you guys are passing things without any kind of care in the world on what the infrastructure is, and we're footing the bill for that.
See, and Corey brought that up last week, and you made a good point about it. I think if both of y'all get on the county commission, it's got to change, or we can make some inroads. All these cities annex in stuff from the county, but the county can't annex in anything. They can't stop it. The cities get all the benefit. The county gets all the BS because their cops, their fire services, I mean, their school systems, everything still has to hold the brunt of the responsibility.
Yep.
They don't get none of the tax money hardly.
Yep. Yeah, and this is what you have. This is what happens when you don't have good communication and you have animosity between commissioners and city councilmen and all that. And that's why I've enjoyed the little bit of time that I've gotten to spend with some city council members. I think that's a very important part of the job that gets overlooked, which is you need to be in communication with those cities. Because in my opinion, if there's going to be high density growth, it needs to happen from the cities, only because it makes the most amount of sense in a downtown area for people that want to walk. So if there's going to be any high density in District 3, I wouldn't support any of that in unincorporated Hall County, like ever. Like it probably just needs to be R1L and that's it. But if you're going to do those types of things, I think you can make a great case for it being in a city, like in a downtown area. But like you said, you need to be on board with people before they pass that kind of stuff from the infrastructure side of it. And that only comes from a place of having a friendly relationship with them, or at least a cordial relationship,
And
where you understand that you guys are together.
Well, how do you level the money out? Do you keep it out of their spliced money if we get it? I mean, do we hold the percentage to cover their portion of the fire services that they use, or the school systems? Or, I mean, where's that? I mean, there's going to have to be a medium worked out somehow.
That is, yeah, I know we don't have time for it, but I would love to see SPLOST reimagined. The problem with SPLOST is not in how we collect the money. The problem with SPLOST is that the municipalities decide whatever they want to spend on, and that's it. And they spend like drunken sailors, and then whatever little project they want, they get. And the problem comes back to two things. They know the amount of money that they're going to get in advance. That is extremely problematic. They should not be told what the amount of money is. You should come with projects that you need. Maybe you have some filler, but if I give you, whatever, let's say like in small terms, let's say I give you $100 and I say, you can only have this $100 if you spend all of it. Then you are going to figure out how to spend all that $100.
Yeah.
So if you start with the end result in advance, then you're going to get all kinds of waste. Like probably $80 is going to be good, but there's going to be a point at which you're just coming up with crap just to spend it, because if you don't spend it, you lose it. So it's like, all right, so we're coming up with, that's already the bad one. But like you said, from a SPLOST standpoint, I think a lot of people would be on board with SPLOST if it made sense from an infrastructure. If we knew, okay, our comprehensive plan says this, we all agreed to it because 10% of the county gave their feedback, right? So 20,000 people said, hey, this is where this needs to go. This is what makes sense here, all this kind of stuff. Now what we do is now we set the budget for this. So, okay, we have all agreed to this kind of development where it happens. Now we're going to take the $440 million and we're going to do what makes the most amount of sense to actually like bring this to fruition. We're not going to spend it on a lot of garbage. In my opinion, we can go down that path, but we're going to spend it on the sewer and the roads and the stuff that makes sense, because it's going to support the comp plan that we all agreed to. So I think they're in tandem. If you have a great comprehensive plan and people are on board with that, I think the spending gets easier, if now granted from the libertarian standpoint, if you have people that are accountable and you have people that are spending the money wisely. Sometimes you can get in situations where I don't trust who's spending the money and what they're spending it on. But in theory, if you're going to take a 1% sales tax, to me, in my opinion, that gets a lot easier to take that if you agree to what it's being spent on. And that only comes from a place of everybody being on the same, on the same page when you start.
Right. In case in points, like the school board, I brought it up several times. They go to these architects and say, what can you build me for $150 million? Instead of saying, hey, we need a new elementary school out on White Sulphur Road. This is what we need in the elementary school. Mm-hmm. Give me the best price you can build this for.
Yep.
that could save the county 20-30%.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't go tell an architect, hey, give me this. That's how you get all these big nice archways and domes and metal buildings. I mean, and fancy metal stuff that don't make your kids learn any better.
No, we just blew another $30 million on making the thing look nice.
Yeah. And like Gwinnett County, they build all their schools rectangular squares. So when they outgrow them, they can turn them into office buildings or something else. They're functional after the school uses.
Dude, yeah, you're on a whole thing there where we don't plan ahead. We know the money's coming in, so we're going to spend it any which way. And the planning part of so many things is problematic. I mean, the school is the biggest. I don't necessarily mean to rip on the schools here, but I went, like we were talking earlier, I went to the East Bloss meeting last night, and the general idea that I have from East Bloss is that if the East Bloss does not pass, they are going to get their pound of flesh. They are going to raise the millage rate. There is never any discussion on how do we spend less money. The county does the same thing. The county's not any better. There's never a discussion on how to spend less money or how to be more efficient with every dollar that we have. It is always, we are on a 3 to 5% growth every year, year after year. How do we maintain that growth rate? So the question is never, again, an efficiency standpoint, it's always, we need this money. We already know, because we know the dollar amount, we already know what we're going to spend it on. We already have this idea in our head of what we're going to do with this money. Now we just have to basically like shame or guilt people into voting for it. And so, yeah, I mean, that whole, the courthouse is on that thing too. I know you guys talked about that. There's so many projects where we're going to spend millions of dollars on it. And there's hardly any plan up front. Like, we got to give you it's like passing Obamacare. We have to pass it to know what's in it. Yeah. And we have to pass SPLOST to know what's in SPLOST.
Well, we don't even know what the hell's in the courthouse plan.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And the other day, they put out a bid package saying it's an expansion of the courthouse. Well, what courthouse are you expanding?
Yep.
You're building a brand new one, and you don't even know where the land is.
Yep. And the problem you get into there, too, of course, is you can get in a situation where you've spent engineering money up front, and then you would lose that sunk cost if you don't build it there.
Right.
So it's like, you can get to a point where if you spend a couple $1 million on things, they're like, well, we got to put it here because we already spent $2 or $3 or $5 million on a plan or all this stuff.
The problem is, where the hell are they going to put it up near the square? There's nowhere to get. They should have built it where the land or the hotel is, and the bridge to nowhere.
Well,
going on,
we have, we have a commissioner in house that's a commercial real estate agent, so maybe they have a maybe they have a great idea.
And they're not going to build it on Brown's Rig because it makes too much damn sense.
Oh yeah, yeah. You guys talked about a lot of opportunities that the county has that they've totally missed out on, and that was a great part of that discussion, which is there's plenty of other places other than downtown that would cost way less money than doing it there. But the problem, of course, is the people that need to sell property downtown, they don't get paid. So that's a whole thing there.
Well, they could get rid of the Kenyon Plaza and build it right there between the two courthouses.
Yeah, build a skyway, something.
Build it right there. I mean, you could move the Kenyon Plaza. I understand that means a lot to the old people around here. It's a nice plaza, and I'm not saying get rid of it, just relocate.
Yeah.
And build it right there. I mean, you don't have to go anywhere.
Yep.
I think one thing that gets lost, and I think it's something that needs to kind of get beaten into the government's head, is that they have a fiduciary duty to the taxpayer and not themselves or their little buddies and real estate developers and whatnot. And I think that goes straight to the top, and then it also needs to be something that gets beaten into the heads of government employees, engineering department, permitting department. I mean, these guys come out and they act like they're doing you a favor by coming out. I'm like, bro, I pay for your freaking salary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The reason you have this office job and the air conditioning in this building and electricity in this building is because the taxpayers pay their bills.
That's what I would say needs to happen up front from the commissioner standpoint. And in my head, if the seats change and there's 3, if I'm in one of the seats and there are 2 others there that feel the same way, I think on day you get sworn in. I think the next day you sit down as many people that you can get in one room in the government building. And the very first day you say, starting right now, if you are not here to serve the taxpayers, if you are not here to be a steward, if you are not here to understand that your role is to help people, there's the door. If that's not something you're interested in, no hard feelings. Here's your opportunity. We'll do a severance or whatever. But, essentially there's the door. And from here on out, if we hear anything where you are not helping people, you're not serving the people, you're not understanding, like you said, that the big part of stewardship over every tax dollar, then you don't belong in Hall County government. This is not the place for you. Maybe there's somewhere else that you can be. But ultimately, I think that has to come from the commissioners. It has to be top down, and it has to be said on day one.
No, and it's like Zach Probst wasn't even supposed to be doing this. He goes around telling everybody, you either vote for SPLOST or we're going to raise your property taxes.
Dude, it really.
And the Chamber of Commerce, I mean, they legally can beat that through their head. Hey, our taxes are going up if we don't pass this. But then they turn around and roll the millage rates back 3%, and your property taxes go up between 40 and 100%. Don't tell me you're giving me a tax break.
Yep. Yeah. And then, of course, I know you guys have talked about it before, too, where we spent money on signage that said that this project was paid for by SPLOST. So,
Right.
we use SPLOST money to pay for marketing of SPLOST. It's like a weird, how does that work?
And it only comes out near the SPLOST votes.
Yep.
If SPLOST wasn't on the May vote.
I don't see those signs. I don't see brand new paved roads or anything all of a sudden. Like I did, like literally that whole thing kind of opened my eyes to the whole
all over Riverside Drive and my side of town. Those SPLOST signs are everywhere.
That's its own little scammy election.
Just real quickly, the scammiest one we just happened. I was just talking to a couple of people about this the other day. There was a change order made at the last work session meeting where we did a change order to Harrington Road, and I'll just put Harrington Road out there. You feel free to look on Q Public who the three property owners are on Harrington Road. But so we paved Harrington Road. And I went and drove down Harrington Road because I'm like, this road's tiny, man. And so I get to the end of the road. There's a certain property that's at the end of the road, but with a certain owner. And I noticed that there's a brand new culvert, and that it only serves one person. Like, this is the only house that you're going to use this culvert on. And so I turned down at the end of the road, and I'm like, how much did this thing cost? Because it's brand new. And so I open records requested as much as I could for Harrington Road. Between the road and the culvert, we spent $500,000 on the road and the culvert. It serves 2 people, 3 people own property down there. And like I said, this is a rabbit trail. If you want to go look this up, I won't spoil the ending for you. But, if you're talking about blowing SPLOST money or money that you spent on roads, what more of a waste of money could you blow $500,000 on than a road and a brand new culvert for one person? And it's like, there's plenty of roads where I've walked them, where people have complained about the county not ever fixing the culvert or not ever fixing whatever. And I'm like, there's one right here, Ben Lee Road. There's one on Hazelnut Drive. There's one on Old Oakwood. There's plenty of roads around that I know of where people have asked for years. And there's multiple people live on the road. There's 20, 30, whatever people live on the road. How is it possible that a road that has 2 houses and 100 acres that one of the county commissioners owns, how did that road get repaved in a brand new culvert? And it's like, again, just stupid stuff. We find things to spend money on because of who our friends are and who needs it. But we don't do the stuff for 20 or 30 generic tax-paying citizens because they're not important enough, I guess. I don't know.
Well, my uncle used to live on Belvedere Drive, which is out Price Road.
Mm-hmm.
And after you get a half mile down the road, it turns into a gravel road, and the damn homeowners have got to pitch in to maintain the road.
Yeah.
And you're talking, there's probably 50 houses down there. They built a subdivision down there, and the county refuses to pave it.
Yep.
And then you're going to do this because of who these people are. I mean, it's just that crap's got to stop.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, anything else you want to ask him, Viral, before we kind of wrap things up?
No, I'm going down this rabbit hole of Harrington Road. That's the
Yeah, go look on Q Public. You will you'll find out very quickly.
Yeah, it's pretty.
how they're done in.
I was kind of shocked when I found out myself, but you know,
We're talking
I
about the Mansfields. I mean, I'm gonna name drop.
Maybe.
That's not-
Well, look who owns 100 acres. That's right there.
Our good old boy commissioner.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
There you go.
you know, and that ain't just coincidence either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
You know,
So what exactly happened here, Tyler? That you said a culvert? What is a culvert?
So there's a stream down there, and
Okay.
so they built a beautiful. It's a beautiful culvert. It's like the precast one where they have like the middle post through there. It's really overbuilt. I mean, maybe you can make an argument like in a flood situation, maybe they have something like that. But it's beautiful. It's brand new, but it's only right in front of the Mansfield residence. That's the only people that ever use that, is that house right there.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Must be
unbelievable.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because those culverts aren't easy to. They're not cheap.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, and then I guess who did the culvert install? That's another one. You could probably guess if you can think of 2 or 3 grading companies around. You can guess who it is.
Well, I would say the Raw brothers.
No, actually, no. Think of who's the other grading company around.
I'd bet my
Simpson.
life would be Simpson.
Yep. Yeah, it's the Simpson grading.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's just
500,000.
yeah.
You know, and Tyler, I don't know if you know about all this, but I mean, Candler Road out through there, it's fixing to all be sold to big corporations. And
Oh yeah.
Jeff Stowe's kids just got that, his son-in-law and son just got approved for their business last week at the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And he rightfully recused himself. But then Simpson just moved to a new part, and from what I understand, there's a big company fixing to come in and pay hundreds of millions of dollars for every bit of that land within the next couple of years.
Yep.
And you know, it's just insider trading is basically what it is.
Well, that other rabbit hole is Glade Farm. I don't, we don't have
Oh
time
yeah,
for that, but the Glade Farm thing is, dude, if you start poking around in Glade Farm, there's no telling what you'll find. I mean, dude,
I know you'll find a bunch of mosquitoes right now.
yeah. Leeches is an appropriate term. Bloodsuckers is probably another appropriate term.
Yeah.
You'll find all kinds of stuff down there.
But yeah, you look, it's kind of like, before we wrap up right here, the city council, they just paid $800,000 for 2 desolate properties behind the BBK, Black Burger King, on Atlanta Highway, on Athens Street right there.
Okay.
And what is that? Not Pearl, now, whatever it is, Athens Street. And
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah,
Yep.
but anyway, right there, and nothing's there. Lanier Tent Rental used to be down there.
Mm-hmm.
There's an abandoned building. And Eddie Barton Sr., who owns a lot of property in town, he's got a reputation of being Slumlord Eddie. And anyway, he bought that land in 2024. Then the city turned around and buys it last week or the week before for $800,000 for a residential, for a parks project. And the lady that was digging into it was telling me about it because she got me involved in it. It ends up the county's involved in it too, because that's going to be part of the highway, the trailway, the trail they're building.
Yep.
And they said they've been looking for land over in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't tell me, I mean, Eddie buys that land on cheap and then turns around and sells it for $800K because he knew what was going there.
Yep.
And the trailways, the mountain, you know what I'm talking about. It goes through Midland Greenery and all. It's just a big waste of money. Nobody uses the damn thing. But it looks good. He's commissioner.
You know what? One thing. If I ever run and get elected, is I'm gonna advocate for taxpayers to boycott their tax bills going forward, because these people get abused. I mean, including myself. We get abused as taxpayers on literally everything. So if you're on the inside and the up and up, and you know the right people, and you got the right connections, you can abuse the rest of the taxpayers. Is what it comes down to. There's literally no reason for a lot of this stuff to happen, because I mean, I'm just this one little thing on Harrington Road. Who does that benefit? For $500,000 of taxpayer money, who does that benefit? It doesn't benefit anybody except for one homeowner that lives there. But more than anything else, it helps and improves the value of Greg Poole. He didn't have to spend $500,000 out of his pocket for something. Anybody else, if I was to go out there and do that, don't have the connections, don't have the right contacts, Hall County is going to foot you the bill to install that culvert. They're not going to do it on the taxpayer bill. Why did that happen? Oh, because guess what? Greg Poole's a county commissioner. He's got the right contacts, and he put $500,000 project.
Yeah,
on the taxpayers. Yeah.
And you see that like roads and water. I feel like if you ever see like weird projects where like, why did we pave that road, or why did we run water out there? It's always because somebody wanted that to develop their property.
Yeah.
Like every single time. It's like the water doesn't follow kind of like a normal schedule. Like if you look at a lot of the water lines, like you turn GIS, or you go into the GIS page and you turn on the water lines, you'll see things in there. You're like, this didn't make any sense to cut through this property or to follow this route. You're like, how did this end up? And then you're like, oh, yeah, because like especially down there off 211, oh, Tom Oliver was involved, or something like that, where it was like
exactly
somebody was involved that wanted it and needed it to develop their property.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, Tyler. I think if you and Corey don't get elected this cycle, it's going to be a louder voice from me to the rest of the residents of the county. Is like, you want change in this county. I mean, forget the national level. You want change in this county. You stop and you boycott your taxes.
And what
until there's any change.
Bringing up, and I'm gonna add to it. I mean, I don't think we can go wrong in District 3 with you or Steve, either one.
Appreciate that.
District 1, we don't have that luxury. Corey's got to get in. You know? And I'm not sure that can happen because he doesn't have the reign. But we talked about it. People just gonna go in there and vote for the incumbent.
I will say I've never heard. It's hard to find people at this point that still support Kathy, and in a weird way, I didn't bring this up, but actually Kathy, in my particular my variance, actually she helped me more than anybody else did, which is weird to say. And so I like Kathy as a person. The problem is her votes. So like you have a disconnect between somebody that is a great person, but somebody that is, in my opinion, starting to do deals on the side. It appears that way, and so. That idea of you got to have 3 seats to be able to do anything.
Right.
And that comes back to it every time, is that seat unfortunately has to change. It doesn't matter if she helped me and if I like her personally, that seat has to change.
Yeah.
If the county direction is going to change.
And Corey's the best option in my opinion. I'm rooting for him. I hope he wins.
I think like Corey said last week, I think being a good person is the bare minimum.
Yeah.
It's got to be the bare minimum here. We can't set the bar that low.
Yep.
It's great that y'all were involved, and y'all were both great people and be great. I just hope that if you don't win, you don't give up and not run the next election cycle, because it gives you a better chance the next cycle, because your name's already out there. People know who you are. They know your stance. And, that gives you a leg up on the next election cycle. Funny actually too. This is kind of it's a random thought I just had going back to the SPLOST stuff, is that I don't see paid promotions or paid sponsors from All for Hall. That little random organization that popped up on Facebook that was pushing T-SPLOST and all the things, just not there anymore.
Yeah, we have to
vote. 1% sales tax. We're done with y'all.
Oh my God! It was somebody on the commission, or somebody that was not somebody in one of the commissions. That was their daughter ran the campaign for the Chamber of Commerce, because the Chamber of Commerce was behind it.
Yeah.
I've got the
It's
notes on
funny
it
how that works,
somewhere.
though. Yeah, no, it's
I've got the
really funny
notes
how that
on it
works.
somewhere. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, we had our own little NGO.
Oh yeah. Now, last thing, then we'll wrap up.
Sure.
What is your plan to hold these builders responsible for infrastructure in their subdivisions, like sidewalks and then road improvements? And we don't want this BS that happened on Blackjack Road, to where last year, remember, may have been 18 months ago, where that sharp curve was, the developer decided it was too much damn trouble for him to do it, and it cost too much. And Kathy Cooper just took it on herself to have the county pay for it. I mean, stuff like that, the developers have got to, they've got to burden some of the cost of this too.
Yeah, and that's the problem with that specific one. I know which one you're talking about, Swansea Road. The reason why, and they even said this, and that's why it's frustrating to know that the commissioners backpedaled on this, because they talked about the fact that the only reason they got the density in there was because they were going to pave the road. Right. So like, if you make a deal and you don't want to uphold your part of the deal, then hey man, the deal ain't going to work. Like, you can't come back in a couple months and ask for a change of the deal. That was your only deal. That was your only opportunity. And the same thing that we see at 5401 Old Winter Highway with the dog bone roundabout.
And Greg Poole put that in the Cagle Mill Road thing too. I mean, are they going to backtrack on it?
I know. Yeah. And even more frustrating is Jeff Stowe. Like, he mentioned that when they passed 5401 Old Winter Highway, Jeff Stowe said, don't come back in 5 months wanting a variance to this stuff. What did they do? They came back in 5 months wanting a variance to it. It's like, you guys make terrible deals to start with, and then you don't even uphold the deals that you make. I'm like, it's just like very, very frustrating and disappointing to know that we have people that are not advocates for the taxpayers, that they're not up there doing deals. Like Viral said, they're not doing deals with the priority of how taxpayer funds are going to be spent. They're doing deals for their friends. And of course, Steve Gilliam and Cameron Henderson and Billy Powell and Kathy Cooper. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they're all in on an LLC together. So like, that part makes sense, but it's ridiculous that you come back and ask for variances to this thing when in the meeting they ask you, are you okay with this condition? Yes, we're okay with this condition. Okay, the end. Like, you're not coming back for this stuff, because what happens is the taxpayers pay for it. So it's like,
well, he's entertaining it though. He's, you got to step your foot down, or you got to put your foot down.
Yeah, grow a spine. Like, that's your job. Your job is to, negotiate on behalf of the taxpayers, to do, to make sure the deal makes sense. So if you're not going to do that, if you're just going to just every single time you're just going to let them do whatever they want, then you're not making deals how you should be. Everything's in negotiation. So if you want to come, if you're coming to the original public hearing and you need to pay for the road, you need to pay for the water. We see that on Ben Parks Road.
You're going to have to pay for sewer. They should pay for sewer too. I mean, because I think the county, I can't remember the number, the county pays like $300 or $400 to annex, for sewer or whatever. I mean, for each lot or something. It's a crazy high number, and the builders don't eat that half the time. It's the taxpayers that end up having to pay for the extra sewer for these big places.
Yeah, it's $500,000 a mile for a road. It's roughly $250 a foot for 12-inch water main. So it's like, all that stuff adds up. So if you're wanting to do the development where none of that exists currently, then we're not paying for that. You guys are going to pay for that. And that's even if it makes sense. In a lot of cases, I don't think it makes sense at all. But, there's a very real problem there with letting these guys off the hook for, not paying for the infrastructure that it's only them that it requires. The road wasn't really needing that prior to you passing that. Everybody was fine down there with, having a well or septic or having a gravel road. Like, nobody was out there like, we need this out here. Everyone was fine with that. So if you're the sole reason why that needs to exist, in my opinion, you should be the sole reason, or you should be the sole payer of that infrastructure.
Right. So, well, that's good. There's a couple other things we want to get into, but we're not going to. That's a good.
Maybe next time, sometime in the future.
Yeah, we'll come back part 2 closer to the election, and maybe, closer to voting day. But we appreciate you coming on. Anything else you want to add before we get off here?
No, that's it. I just appreciate the time. I appreciate you guys, what you guys are doing. Like I said up front, there's been so little interest in the local stuff that anybody doing anything to bring awareness locally, I think I'm all for it. So what you guys are doing, it's only going to help the situation in Hall County by what you guys are doing and bringing awareness to this stuff. So appreciate you guys.
I appreciate you and what you're doing. I mean, you've opened a lot of eyes. Your videos are good. They're entertaining. You bring a lot of knowledge that people don't normally get, because they don't know where to go to ask these questions, who to ask these questions to. And, Corey's doing a good thing down there. We need more younger people in running for office because, Hall County's getting older. I mean, it is the leaders, especially, and we've got to have people to be able to step in that knows what they're doing. And I had a lady ask me the other day, why is Hall County, why are the crooks being so, I said crooks, but it's the swamp, being so out and outlandish about what they're doing now. And I just told her flat out, in my opinion, it's from a town going to a city and a city going to an urban type development. We're getting bigger. And there's so many people moving in, these good old boys are losing their grip on control, and they're trying to intimidate people to keep control. And we can't bow down to the intimidation by them slamming social media and how we do things. We've got to stay the course. And I appreciate everything that y'all are doing.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think almost tying into that too is it's probably not been easier to know who's swamp and who's not because it's so in your face now. So like they could do a lot of stuff in secret. Then there starts being a lot of people looking into what they're doing. And now what you see, I think I know we talked about this the other day. Now what you're seeing is kind of this blatant, this arrogance to it. So now it's like, yeah, okay, we know that but we're going to do it anyways.
Right.
And so, that now it's like a money thing. I think when you look at campaign contributions, I think it's really easy to see who's where. But yeah, you are starting to see a little bit of a change from trying to hide everything to now we're going to do it whether you like it or not. And you're not going to have a say about it.
Yeah,
so.
and that's got to stop. I mean, and I think that's part of the transition, and we're getting there.
Yeah.
And we don't, and I know I'm not going to stop, and I don't think Viral's going to stop because he's wanting to get into public office. He's talked about running before.
Yeah.
And I may, once I get out of my situation that I'm in, having to take care of, family stuff and everything, but that's on down the line. But we've got to keep moving in the right direction.
Absolutely.
I don't have a reason to run, honestly. Like I have no passion to run and be in public office. If there were better people already in office, if there was accountability, if there was, and it's to me, it's it'd be great to have younger minds in public office, because right now we have, and again, not to be ageist or anything like that, but we have a bunch of old heads. Greg Poole could barely figure out how a data center works, and I'm just sitting there in the county room. I'm sorry, Greg Poole too, yeah, but Stan Hunt, and I was just sitting there, just like, how are you voting for something you have no idea how it works? You know what I mean? I mean, and
yeah.
I just happen to have a background in data center development. Not everybody does, but it's something that I could have easily looked up and done enough research to figure out not to ask a lot of the dumb questions that you ask. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
And so not only that, but again, the ethics standpoint of it, I have a real estate license. I'm happy to throw that away and to be, if that's one of the things that's required to be on a commission. But it's just like, dude, you're supposed to be working for the taxpayers, including yourself, because you're a taxpayer too.
Mm-hmm.
You don't care about it because you benefit from it, because you're taking the commission checks. You're doing the dirty deals behind closed doors. And then when people lose trust and faith in government, you want to sit there and cry, but then you're not helping the situation at all either. So that's my only real, my biggest reason I would want to run, and I would be in Billy Powell's district, and somebody who's missed, I think 4 or 5 out of the last 6 or 7 meetings. I'm just like, and you know, and I've seen, I've never had to deal with the guy personally. I've heard nothing but bad things about him.
Yeah.
But it depends on who you ask, I guess. So yeah, you know, we got to, and then he's been running unopposed. Like these folks have been running unopposed, which is another big pet peeve of mine.
Yep.
If I lose, I lose. Not a big deal to me. But at least give people a chance to vote for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's terrible that, you know, and I learned this recently that he's been running unopposed for 14, 16, 18, 20 years or something like that. I'm just like, why? And then you guys wonder why things are the way they are. Like he's got no challengers.
Yeah, I think that's the hallmark, I feel like, kind of, or stereotype of the swamp, is that they just don't work hard. Like they're so used to, I think, like their money and their influence that they just, like you said, it's like they don't want to even know all the specifics on this stuff. So I feel like in a lot of times when I see things where they act like they didn't really know what was going on, it's like they didn't really even care, because the deal wasn't about the specifics of it. It was about their friends, or it was about making money. So like when the public hearing is almost like a, you know, they talked about charade a little bit, but it's almost like a nuisance to them. So like I can always tell like who shouldn't be there when they treat the public hearing as a chore. Like it's like, oh God, here we go again. Like
and
I got
when they turn around and demand you respect them when they don't respect the dang thing you do.
Yeah.
I get it. So I think this also falls back on us as citizens too.
Yeah.
I got involved recently again in seeing Tyler, you and Corey go up there, and Jill go up there, and Jody go up there, and you know, I think it's little people like us that show up to the meetings and go up there and voice your opinions and whatnot. I think that's giving more people hope. Oh, because I mean, everybody's scared. You know, they're like, well, I mean, what's my voice gonna do? I'm like, no, dude, you got to go over there and you got to remind these people they work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that's where that's where that, you know, that scare factor kind of comes in, is because, you know, I would say prior to this year, I don't think a lot of people got involved unless certain developments or certain rezonings affected them directly.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got more people showing up. Social media's done a great job of this, and props to you and Jody and Corey and everybody else for using social media to kind of expose a lot of the BS that's going on in our local governments. And I think it gives people a little bit more confidence of showing up and, oh wait, they're right. They're supposed to be working for us. Like this doesn't make sense. And hopefully that gets better. You know, hopefully more people show up to the meetings. So yeah.
And I've heard a couple of people even mention to me they feel intimidated going up to do the sign-up sheet because of the reputation. Don't get me wrong, the marshals, they're the nicest people you'll ever meet. They'll talk to you. But just the presence of them around that table and meeting, it intimidates. Some of these people don't have the confidence to do this. They're not just going to walk up there and just sign a sheet and say, hey, I'm talking or whatever, you know. And if they've got that police presence all around, you know, it's kind of, we need to make it more inviting for people to sign up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe sign up online, then they can just show up and check in.
There you go.
You know, it's something that makes it more user friendly.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's like you said, you know, to your point earlier, or just now, like this last voting meeting, I feel like when I looked at the agenda, I'm like, man, there's not anything on here that's crazy, but there's a lot of people coming now. Like I feel like there's at least 2-3 times as many people just showing up to an average voting meeting now than there used to. Like I said, you know, when I first started, my first meeting that I went to in 21 would have been heard. I think I was heard in October of 21. Can't remember. But that was the first meeting I went to, and there was like nobody there. I mean, like there might have been 5 or 6 people in the audience, and everything was, well, they're going to pass it anyway, so why do I even bother to go? But you're seeing a lot of change now. I mean, I think any given meeting, you're having so many more people than that used to go. And I think a lot of that comes from, like you said, an awareness on social media. But I think hopefully people are starting to see that once somebody starts standing up and starts talking, then it's like, okay, like, it's not just me, or like you said, that kind of fear of public speaking, I think, goes away a little bit. If if you have the meeting ahead of time, like if you have that community meeting ahead of time and there's going to be a couple other people there. But certainly I feel like the more exposure this stuff gets from, anybody doing anything online, the more people hopefully start showing up, and then they start really seeing how important this process is. So.
Yeah, because it is important, and we're getting more transparent, and the word's getting out, and me and Viral, we're definitely going to keep this going, and we know you are, because you got too much involved and, too much invested.
I'm in too deep.
Yeah, no doubt. So,
well, I mean, like, look, either way, the votes swing. Hopefully you don't get discouraged to continue doing what you're doing, Tyler.
No. It's interesting. Yeah, and yeah. I mean, I won't take up more time, but yeah, I wouldn't. If I lose, I'm not going away. I'll still live here, obviously, so that part of it's easy. But
right.
I like I said, I'm in too deep now to see what's happening and not try to be a part of it somehow, to try to right the wrongs and try to make sure that the county government's doing their job. So yeah, I'm not.
Well, and especially with groups like ours and North Georgia Advocate and Holland Formed and other groups, there's still plenty of stuff to do behind the scenes to where you can make a difference. I mean, it's not like you're fighting an uphill battle by yourself anymore.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's kind of the voting meeting part of that, which is if you are opposing things how the government is doing it right now, you are not alone. It felt like you were alone for a long time, that you were just a voice in the wind, but there's a lot more people that see how important this stuff is and are willing to step up and to do things.
And I think people's realizing at the federal level, Bill and I talked about it, federal level, there's not really much we can do. They're all corrupt as hell. I mean, no matter who's in charge, but you do have a say-so locally.
Oh yeah.
And that's what affects you on a daily basis, not what happens in DC.
Yep.
For the most part. I mean, we're not talking about temporary gas prices or food. I mean, that affects everybody, but what happens locally affects you forever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all the grassroots stuff, though, any kind of major changes on a national level, they all start on the local levels first. So yeah, we got to change stuff on the local level and get the corruption and the bad apples out of here before we can even think about seeing any type of change on a national level in this country.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Well, Tyler, I appreciate it, and Viral, it's good again. We will hopefully I'll have this up this evening. It takes a few hours, for the video to process and things, but we will have you back on before Election Day. And
when is Election Day? What is that? May
19th.
May 19th. Yeah.
So wait, so the vote, as far as the ballots and stuff go, it's only if I live in your district that you're running for, you'd show up on my ballot, right? Like, it's not like, okay. So yeah, unfortunately I won't be able to vote for you, but if I could,
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
You will have on your ballot spliced.
Yeah. But lost. You have to figure out if you want to let the county school system keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah,
exactly. So, but yeah, we'll get you on before May 19th. Hopefully, you're going to be at the Jody's thing on the 25th of April.
Yeah, the end of April is really busy. So April 18th is the Hall County GOP candidate forum. So that's like everybody. So that's that Saturday, and then of course the following Saturday is the Hall Informed candidate forum meeting.
And that's going to be more of a real debate, and that's why Jody and I and Corey and everybody talked about it. It's not going to be formulated around political parties or whether it be Democratic Party, Republican. It's just going to be an open debate for the people. And that's where you're really going to get to where if everybody shows up like they're planning, you're going to get to the meat and the bones of where people's actual beliefs are possibly.
Yeah, I just don't know that when I think of like the local seats, I don't really think of them as a partisan seat. I just don't I've never really kind of understood why the qualification process works how it does at a local level. I don't see them being partisan. Now I have had some pushback to that. There are some people that do think that is it needs to be a partisan seat, but I personally don't. It's land use, budget, and people that work at county government. So I don't really see how that is inherently Republican or Democrat in nature.
Right.
So
I'm a believer in like sheriff and district attorney and things like that should be nonpartisan.
yeah.
But the county commission, I don't have an issue with it either way. I don't care. I'll vote for a Democrat if he has beliefs like I do, or I'll vote Republican. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Because hell, anybody that's a Democrat lately that don't like where they're going, they've been swapping to Republicans anyway. I mean, they were Democrat just a couple of years ago anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the qualification process just works if you have money. There's not really much going on there.
Yeah, just because you put a different letter beside your name, that makes you a better candidate than you were 6 months ago.
Yep.
I don't buy it,
Yeah, that's why you have to have the discussions with everybody, because this stuff isn't, like I said, inherently partisan. So if you're really wanting to know how they feel specifically on things, you got to have everybody, because that's the only way you're ever going to figure out everybody.
No doubt. No doubt. So, all right. Well, guys, thanks a lot. And we will see y'all next time. We'll try to do one next week. We're going to try to have Steve Gailey or Shannon Davidson on next, and we'll keep going down the line. Hopefully we get everybody on the podcast.
There you go.
Thanks a lot. We'll see y'all next time.
Yeah, see you guys. Thank you.
Bye.